And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today, Wednesday, October 10th, 2012. I'm Doug Hagmann. I'm the co-host, along with my son, Joe Hagmann, co-host of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, analysis, and commentary. Information that you need to know in these perilous times, folks. And of course, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Our primary platform is, of course, the Blog Talk Radio, but we are also simulcast complements of the Christians United Broadcasting Network, and I want to just say how much appreciated that is. We are still dark tonight with respect to video. That will change tomorrow as we continue our construction, remodeling, renovation, and of our studio. It's going to be a great. It's going to be a great setup. Anyway, Joe, welcome to tonight's program.
Oh, glad to be here. We got so much going on in the news tonight that I could not wait to get on air. Before the show, we did
2 radio shows. Oh, well, yeah, actually, yeah. Joe and I were on the Roth show, which was a tape delay at earlier, and then I was on the Voice of Texas, I believe, AM 700, Chris Baker show, and that was an interesting show. It was about 20 minutes of analysis and commentary, but for tonight, Joe, and speaking on behalf, we're with Joe. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your belief, your trust in us. We're walking through a minefield of current events together, and I'll tell you something. You know, each and every day that as we progress into this, the only way, and I find myself turning more and more to the Bible. To really understand what's going on. And boy, I'll tell you, for the life of me, I just don't understand how people, secular people, can't. I can't imagine their mental frustration, their anxiety, their cognitive impairment to understand the times without the Bible. You know what I mean? It's like that's the instruction manual. That tells everything.
Yeah.
And without that, you're missing a huge component of current events. But you know, again, I think that we certainly try in our own humble way, in our own small way, if you will, to really put together the information for you folks for the show each and every night. And boy, I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this program. You guys are fantastic. Our listeners are fantastic. I've received a lot of emails from listeners about the homework assignment, like the names of the name for the Benghazi attack, and I've got some just fantastic, just extremely fantastic emails about that, and all the information which our listeners send to us. Man, I'll tell you, we thank you, because as I said yesterday, each and every person out there listening to this broadcast, you're all leaders in your own sphere, whether it's your family or your neighborhood or your community. You're all leaders, and we're all here today at this very moment because this is where God put us, and this is the time God wants us to act. And but thank you for choosing to be with us. And by the way, we're going to be taking your calls tonight. This is an open line program tonight, 661-244-9839 for your calls. And I do hope, and by the way, I think we have all of our audio issues repaired. And I want to thank Troy for his time and many other people who have graced us with their input. And so it's, hopefully we sound good.
Yeah. And I received many messages in the chat room saying that yesterday the sound was much better. So I hope
Good.
that continues.
And I think it will. Yeah. And oh boy, I didn't mean that. I'm just excited because there's, like you said earlier, there's just so much going on. I think we've been vindicated, haven't we, about the Benghazi Stevens situation. I think.
Well, yes.
The headlines play out today.
Today is an interesting day as you and I were, before your first interview, were watching Fox News, The Roundtable. And they started talking about...
I'm going to stop wearing suspenders, by the way, because I just happened to see Bob Beckel on there, and I thought, holy cow. Go on.
Yeah, they were talking about the Libyan situation. Now, apparently, the State Department is doing a 180 and saying that they never said the video was the cause of the violence, that it was a terrorist attack. And the White House is apparently following suit. State Department spins new tale on Benghazi attack. Official account changes, no protest over the Islamic video. And surprise, surprise, you can go to HomelandSecurityUS.com and find, I think it's Benghazi to the White House, the trail from Benghazi to the White House.
That's right. That was, when was that?
September 24th, I think, was the date.
All right. And, I delayed Body of Lies from Benghazi to Barak. And I delayed writing this. We had this information shortly after the 9/11 attacks of 2012 in Benghazi. We had a lot of this information. And then, folks, if you recall, the Sunday following that, we had a gentleman on a special Sunday night program. We interviewed the self-appointed spokesperson for this video. I got to tell you this, Joe. I still think about that interview. I don't know. I don't know, and it's our policy not to talk about people after we've interviewed them, where they don't have a chance to respond. So all I can say is, if you're interested, listen to that interview. I just don't see how this individual really fits into the current actual plan, and I'm not even sure the video even play. The video is just a red herring to me.
Yeah, well, ABC News today. Yesterday said this is a report from ABC News, as they had on, it's called The Attack on Benghazi Consulate, unprecedented, State Department officials say. And the size and lethality of the attacks of the U.S. consulate compound in Benghazi that left Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans dead was unprecedented, as senior State Department officials said today. And whatever you did in the audio there, you took the noise out of one side of my headphones. But
I just
going on, senior State Department officials today gave the most detailed account to date of the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi on September 11th, which killed Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other diplomats. One official said the nature of the assault was unparalleled in recent history. Well, what is going on here is the media is covering for the State Department, the Obama administration, and the web of lies they continue to spew, not only about this, but every other event that happens. Going back to the Osama bin Laden raid, to the birth certificate of Obama, back to 9/11, back to Oklahoma City, Waco, constantly. But as their stories change, the people in the alternative media, people who did real research and found out what was going on, told the whole story pretty much, from the beginning. So right now it's just confusion is what the media is doing, and what the State Department and White House is doing, bringing confusion upon the people, as we have Pentagon deploying troops into the Jordan-Syrian border. We have the free speech tested as anti-Islam pastor is coming back to Dearborn, and I want to thank RoboMom in the chat room. She sent me an email with a good video on this lady's, her take on this free speech deal, and we're going to get into that. It is so important about this free speech issue, and the article from the Detroit Free Press, if you read it, it is written in a way that causes more of a stir than the actual article, or the actual situation. And listen to the way they word this. They say, Quran-burning Pastor Terry Jones returns to Dearborn today for another rally against Islam. The issue of free speech is back under the spotlight in Metro Detroit. Jones, who sparked an international protest of Muslims over the burning of Islam's holy book, intends to protest outside at S.O. Ford High School. There. Yeah, and read that sentence.
Okay.
Yeah. Jones, who sparked international protests. So he's the reason for the violence.
Right.
Because he burned a Quran.
According to this, right. I got you. Keep going.
So, and then they say...
The holy book, Islam's holy book. Okay, all right.
And that's David Munston, a spokesman for the Dearborn Public Schools, characterizes Jones' assertion as not accurate. Even so, Dearborn's police chief and mayor say they will allow Gainesville, Florida preacher to speak on a sidewalk outside the school this afternoon and will guarantee his civil liberties while ensuring an orderly day for students. Well, how nice of them to be so and welcoming as to open their sidewalks is to let this man from Florida come to Michigan.
So what this
speak?
What they're saying is it's the content of the speech, despite the content being either controversial or even downright. I think that at one point they said it was unfactual or assailed the speech itself, the context of the speech, the content of the speech, or the talk.
Yeah,
and is that how we are now looking at the First Amendment to the Constitution? If we agree with what you say, then or even though you're wrong, we're going to let you say it. To have your freedom of speech contingent upon the content of which you're saying, the content of your speech is just it's un-American.
And it goes on. We know that free speech is so treasured in America, said Dearborn's Mayor Jack O'Reilly Jr. It can be offensive. It can hurt us emotionally. But until it causes physical harm or a true physical threat, it is permissible activity, and so we will respect that. Those remarks and the way that they're worded is very cryptic, meaning they're permitting the free speech right now is what they're saying. They're letting it go for now. But until it causes physical harm or a true physical threat, which it never does unless somebody calls for violence or is telling a group of people to do something violent, there is no danger. I mean, people can say whatever they want, and there was a good point made on the show we watched on Fox News about this on the 5 Roundtable, whatever that show is, and they said, it's okay. People can mock Jesus and see Christians running around killing people. Same thing with Mormons or any other religion. Why is there an exception, and why are feelings put in front of the law? Why are the feelings of Muslims who say they're offended? Well, a lot is offending. Look at the new TV shows. Look at the music that is out there. That is offensive. Look at the way that our government has talks about Jesus not being, if you're a Christian, have a Christian ideology, that you're a domestic terrorist. That's offensive. You don't see us burning, down government buildings over it.
But that's the platform in which they are going to take away our First Amendment rights, just like Fast and Furious was a subtle attempt or not so subtle attempt to curtail our Second Amendment rights. This is being used as a means to attack our First Amendment rights. And again, I would direct people to the New York University Law Review. If you search the terms First and Second Amendments, in fact, I'll put something in the chat room hopefully before the end of the show. But there's a lengthy treatise, thesis about how the two are interwoven. And you take one down, obviously you're not going to have the other. But it was interesting because I have to say, it was a difficult read, and it was something that I had to digest over a period of 2 days. Yeah. But look, this is what's going on. But we're going to we're going to get into more of this. But I just want to say this, Joe, and folks, I'm a fan of metaphors. I like metaphors, but as it was explained to me by my intelligence source, and Joe heard this as well. What's going on right now, if you look at each one of us as fish in the ocean, and I think this is I would say that this is probably an accurate statement. If you look at us as each one of us is fish in the ocean, and we go for the bait, and we grab a hold of the bait, and of course, the bait is attached to a fishing line, and we struggle, and we struggle, and we struggle. Well, what's happening to us right now is they're trying to really tire us out, to take the fight out of us, so they can reel us into the boat. I don't know if that's an applicable metaphor, or if I really messed that up, but that's what's taking place right now, and they're doing that through things like this with the video, which is just, speaking of fish, a red herring, but this is how the globalists are doing this.
Yeah. Also in the news, new civility: Obama supporters threaten to riot if Romney wins, and this is a article that puts together a whole bunch of people's personal Twitter messages, and just to read some of them: if Romney is elected president, it's gonna be a riot. It's gonna be a riot. If Romney wins, I'ma start a riot. I'ma start a riot.
Yeah, these have been retweeted, and of course we monitor the Twitter messages via TweetDeck and the trending topics, and certainly we hone in on this. But there's this undercurrent, this undercurrent right now taking place, and it's
Twitter user @ThugPickles says, "I heard Romney trying to take away food stamps. If he do, I'm gonna start a riot."
Yeah, no, you're quoting this, so it's not you. It's not your imperfect English. That's
I'm reading as it's
right.
written.
But what we've noticed here is a lot of these people are being egged on or baited by,
threatened.
I got to tell you, a lot of this is not coming from the black community. It's actually coming from the more organized labor, organized
The unions.
Yes, it's not it's not originated at the street level, within the black communities, which is frightening, because this does comport with what we were talking about earlier about in the earlier programs about social and societal chaos.
Yeah. And
and Joe, if I can, I saw a posting here on our interactive chat, and folks, we invite you to join with us in our interactive chat feature on Blog Talk Radio. It's a great feature. It's an extended family. The only thing that we do ask is that you be civil, you be polite, and you can express your opinion. Just do it in a polite manner. But anyway, I saw this Omar Cotter from Canada. This is probably one of the most underreported stories this year, and I didn't have a chance to talk to you about this, but a couple of years ago, I think it was in 2006, right after Omar Cotter was put in Guantanamo, sentenced to 40 years in Guantanamo, I was on the right side with a gentleman by the name of Doug. He has since passed away. I do have the audio from that program. It was a Canadian-based program, but here's the deal: the Cotter family of Canada, they are essentially Canada's first family of terrorism. Well, Omar Cotter was sentenced to 40 years in prison for the murder of Christopher Spear in Afghanistan, I believe it was. Well, the Obama put pressure on Canadian Prime Minister Harper to bring Cotter back and have him serve his sentence in Toronto. Because of the laws in Canada, Omar Cotter, the unrepentant Omar Cotter, is going to be walking the streets within months. Now, the Cotter family, and this is a little known fact, the Cotter family made their money, or were involved in, allegedly, in the event that they're listening, because they do have deep pockets and government or lawyers, allegedly were involved in a charity. It was the Human Concern International, I believe it was, or a variation of that name, where they allegedly funded terrorist activities. But nonetheless, if you research KHADR, research that family, folks. You can do it if you're so inclined, and look at it's beyond. I don't even know how to explain it. It's relevant insofar as you've got Obama's pressure on Canada, and it's also relevant by the fact that Obama, through his Muslim proclivities, is allowing this to take place. It's just, but just do your own research if you're so inclined. KHADR. You will be angry when you get done researching that family and the fact that we have a dead soldier and other maimed soldiers from this attack, and this man is going to be walking the streets of Canada.
Wonderful.
And it's terrible. Not only that, there's family connections to Bin Laden, the Bin Laden family, that is. So there's a lot of intertwined situations with this. That's why it's so important in and of itself. It's not, but when you look at the bigger picture, it is, especially with Obama putting pressure on the Canadian government to take Cotter into Canadian custody, and knowing that their laws would let them set them free here within weeks. So thank you for allowing me to get into that. Go ahead, Joe. I'll turn it back to you.
Other news, Europe edges closer to a banking union. European ministers examined a proposal on Tuesday to limit planned new powers for the European Central Bank to supervise leaders in a bid to ally the concerns of countries outside the Eurozone over a new banking union. The diplomatic drive came as the president of the European Central Bank and Germany's markets regulator cautioned that setting up the new system of supervision would take up to the end of next year, later than many expected, but a potential setback to efforts to help disinterested Eurozone countries and their banks. Brussels proposed earlier this month that the European Central Bank take charge of the supervising all banks in the euro currency in the stages from January as the first step towards creating a banking union under which chiefly Eurozone countries would eventually jointly back their leaders. And this story is something that needs to be put on the back burner because this setting up of a banking union needs to be, the model of this needs to be looked at, as we ourselves will see if we get a new currency or when we get a new currency. We know that the dollar will not be able to be sustained. China is already rivaling us to take over as the world reserve currency, and they are the Amero has been talked about, a new world order, one world currency has been talked about. I don't think we're close enough for that, but this is something that needs to. We need to keep watch.
What don't you think we were close enough for?
A complete one world currency, unless something, worldwide devastation would polarize all of us to stop and go along with this, or the people who would fall for it.
Look, what. And I think you heard part of the conversation from the intelligence source, which I'll call the professor, because that's the name I gave him. He already said, look at the G20, and you mentioned this. I think we covered the G20 summit back in August, but they created the solution knowing that they created the problem. And the solution is going to be a basket of currencies, an international currency, comprised of a basket of currencies known as SDRs. And so I think maybe we will go right from the dollar into the SDR, making no stop for the Amero. And perhaps that is done by design because, hey, we're all talking about the Amero. Remember, before people were saying, hey, the North American Union, the Amero. No, they could very well put us right into an international currency. So I'm not sure. I have to I'm inclined to believe that we're going to go into an international.
Where's the good news in any of that?
There is no good news.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but Our economy is unsustainable. We talked about this on the Roth show before we came on our show.
That's right. Yeah,
we
did.
talked about the reasons for hyperinflation, and when we have a currency backed by nothing and the federal government continuation of printing money, especially a policy of unlimited printing of money, is said by many respected economists to be pretty much a suicide of the currency. And there have been many countries in recent years, last 100 years, that have seen hyperinflation. And look at the history of those countries, what they went through. Wheelbarrows of money for a loaf of bread, and you couldn't even have enough money to get the wheelbarrow. Is one of the analogies used. But
I got to tell you, and this is a little off track, and forgive me but I remember when I was probably 9, 10 years old, and going into a actually, I think this grocery store had like a not much more than a dirt floor in it at the time, and I was holding my mom's hand, and I remember specifically her saying this. And I told my wife this the other day. She said two things to me that I really remember that day. She said, number one, there's going to come a day when you're not going to be able to walk out of the grocery store. You're going to spend, and I'm trying to think of how she said it, but you're going to spend $50 and you'll be able to carry the bags out in one trip. I'm thinking, boy, are we there now? And then she said, at some point in your life, you're going to see a time when you're probably going to have to take a wheelbarrow full of money, full of cash to buy a loaf of bread. And I had no clue what she was talking about. I didn't understand it, but I think we're seeing that come to fruition right now.
Yeah, absolutely. In other news going on, we have the Pope today prayed in Arabic. The Pope prays in Arabic for the first time. Pope Benedict, the 16th, on Wednesday pronounced the blessing in Arabic at his weekly audience in front of 20,000 pilgrims.
And ladies and gentlemen, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the Pope praying in Arabic?
Well, see, I don't have a problem with him praying in another language,
right?
At all. What I do have a problem with is him trying to merge or carry the idea that we all worship the same God, just in a different name.
Right, because we know that,
and that's what this is.
The two gods are not the same.
That's a position George Bush took. There was an interview, infamous interview, you can find on YouTube, where he was asked, "Do you think we all worship the same God?" And he said, "Yes, I do. I think we just take different, roads to get there." And this is, a deceitful. One of the worst things you can do is to spread false doctrine, lead people astray with false doctrine. And there's the New Age movement that's is doing a very good job of moving people astray from the true doctrine, to the point where I'm sure some of you or most of you are familiar with the movie Zeitgeist. And there's a lot of truth in that video, except when it comes to religion. They claim that religion was all just a fairy tale set up, basically to destroy.
Isn't that interesting?
Control, or they say it's aliens, that it's never the true. They'll get into the Anunnaki and this and that, factual elements that are in the Bible, saying history shows that there was the flood, as talked about in the Bible. There was this, there was that, but it wasn't because of God. It was because of aliens. But whatever. This very popular movement and belief system has the whole, divided the truth-seeking people completely in half.
As intended, right?
Right.
That's what the intent is.
Yeah, they are taking their souls with them as well, because they are finding, now teachers who are speaking doctrines that they can, understand and will agree with. Oh, that explains it. I'd rather believe we came from aliens than a God who's going to judge us. So I'm going to go with what this guy says. And that's the mentality. That's how susceptible this generation is, because of the saturation of TV shows, movies, music, and the desensitization and exclusion of the teachings of the Lord in school.
Well, I just want to say this. I received a pre-release copy from Prometheus Books. Dr. Paul Williams had written a book called Crescent Moon Rising. And this goes back to the Pope Benedict speaking, praying in Arabic, and some things here in America. And the reason I received it was for a blurb on the dust jacket, which I've done it for his book, his last book, and some other. But anyway, when I read through this book, which again has not been released yet, it's scheduled for publication. I believe it is in January. I just couldn't believe the statistics from 2000, like from the year 2000 to today, what the information the book contains, the research he did with respect to how Islam is being used here in America, the numbers of mosques that have sprung up even since 9/11, and the purpose behind that, how it's really a tool of the globalists to dilute our belief system here in this country. So what is taking place is they're using Islam to and as you said before, and Bush himself had said, look, we all worship the same God. Well, no, we don't. The Christian God is totally different than the Islamic God.
Yeah.
Allah and God are two distinctly different entities. But this is how, through this deception, how we are going to be, or the masses they're attempting to deceive the masses.
Yeah, and I have been doing some Bible studying today, and I want to do a whole show on the book of Daniel and the interpretation of chapters 10 through 11. And I've watched a couple of YouTube videos trying to see what other people were saying about this, and I used to see videos a lot about the system of the beast being the Roman Catholic Church, and now I'm seeing a lot of videos saying the beast system is worshiping Allah, Islam. And some of the things that are said do make sense. I have to, go through and do a lot more research, but something I saw said, there's a mistranslation about the word mark, getting the mark of the beast. It could be not. It wasn't supposed to be translated as the word in your head or
as if
arm. It's supposed to be on
like a microchip or something like that.
They
right?
said on. But I'm not sure if that's correct either. That's just some of the things I came across today. But when reading the book of Daniel, it was almost like it's a look at history, and we're not too. I mean, from where I'm understanding right now, we are close to the end, and I'm talking about.
The end of days, you mean?
Or the end of days, that we are into the time that Daniel is talking about in the Bible, in his prophecies, when, people will be seeking knowledge will be increased. And
boy, I mean, the scientific knowledge is being constantly increased. Well beyond even what we know right now.
Yeah, and Daniel chapter 11, verse 23, where it talks about them setting up a league. The nations will, after the league made up with him shall work deceitfully, he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. And how that's the League of Nations, and how it comes back as the UN, and it's just very interesting and insightful. And
indeed, it is.
I think this is like the 6th time in the last 2 months I've read the book of Daniel and come away with something different. But we could go to the phones if you want.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Because, again, folks, this is a listener-driven show, and we always like your input and information. So we're going to put you on as the calls have come in. So we're going to go to Jason. Jason, you're on with Doug and Joe Hagmann. 570, you're up.
How do I do that? How do I do it?
Hi, 570, you're up. You're on the air.
Hi, Doug.
Yes.
Can you hear? Oh, hang on 1 second.
Okay. I misidentified that person,
Hi.
by the way. Hi. I'm sorry.
My name's Pat.
Hi, Pat.
I'm from New Jersey, and I got 2 things. I've been listening to your show now for a couple of months, and I just think you guys are right on. I know you're the real deal of being Christians. So I'm really understanding a lot of things. First quick thing is, my sister went to a wedding in New Jersey this Sunday, in Atco, New Jersey, and they actually, in the Methodist Church, allowed this couple getting married to have a reading from the Quran. We're born-again Christians. My sister couldn't believe it. They did a reading from Khalil Gibran, a few readings, and there was nothing at all from a Christian marriage ceremony. So we're trying to figure this one out. So, and then the other issue is, like 2 years ago, I was in the Gulf of Mexico 6 months after the oil spill.
Oh, yes.
And, well, you know what? I was awake since then because I knew something was wrong. They kept saying, come on down, the water's fine. This was in October. It was 6 months after the spill. And I knew there had to be chemicals. My husband wanted to go, and I thought, well, they're all saying it's okay, so I'm going to go. So we went. I went in the water and came out with a chemical burn on my leg.
Oh, wow.
And I had a nurse's training stuff, so I knew what it was. And a short time later, I got the hives, I got the rash up my legs, and I almost died from it.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, when you say a short time later, I know there's a little bit of a delay here. So, but when you say a short time later, do you mean like weeks or months or?
No, right away. I came out of the water and I saw this. It was like and guess what? I took pictures of everything. I'm a little nervous to speak out about it, but you know what? I don't care. The truth is the truth, and I know the Lord will protect me. And pretty much right away, I was told to shut up about it. So I came out of the water, and maybe 5 minutes later, I looked down at my foot, my leg area, and it was like this pink area, and I thought, boy, that looks like a chemical burn. And then, well, first we went in the water, my husband and I. He went down far from me, and he went out, and I walked by this brownish stuff. I mean, I got all pictures, and I'm looking out in the water, and this brownish swirling stuff, it looked like it had salad oil on top. It went out way along the horizon, and I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, is that oil? So I yelled to my husband, let's get out. We weren't even in for 10 minutes. So we get out, and I saw that chemical burn. So I'm looking at my legs, and up my legs went this rash. And then, I started getting, my heart starts pounding. And so then I rinsed it. We get off the beach, and I just really got sick. The headache, the nausea, all this stuff. And oh, my gosh, and it hit me so bad, it was like, crazy thoughts, and so we came home, and I went to a clinic, this doctor's group clinic, and I was diagnosed with chemical exposure.
Wow.
And, yeah, but I think I should have been a detective because I'm just curious about things. I have one of those scientific minds that I want to know why, what's going on. So when we're actually at the beach, I stayed out of the water. We never went back. We were there for 4 more days. So we're walking up and down the beach, and I'm saying, "What is this stuff?" There were what I found out later were tar balls, and I picked up this globular thing, and my finger turned purple, and I just couldn't figure out. And then I went up on this sand, and there was all this crunchy stuff, and I'm thinking, what the heck? Because I grew up at the Jersey Shore, so I know what it should look like, and what should be in the water and the sand and what shouldn't. So I snapped all these pictures. Little did I know they were the only things that were going to get me medical treatment. Because, so anyway, so I got home, went to the clinic. I had to go to the eye doctor. I had all kinds of problems, and I had neurological problems. And, oh, my God, it was horrible. It was really a chemical exposure, a chemical poisoning, basically. So,
yeah.
And my doctor, I had such strong brain problems, the doctor thought I was nuts. But I got a hold of a wonderful doctor in Louisiana, and I went to see him, Dr. Mike Robichaux. And they had a clinic down there, and, he said, what you've experienced is normal. He said, a lot of people have this. And I knew something, it was so wrong because I called the Department of Health when I was there, And they said, oh, yeah, they said the VOCs, the volatile organic hydrocarbons level was high in that area. Like, in other words, what I'm saying is they should have never let tourists go down there. But that was the time. Do you remember when they were saying, come on down, the water's fine,
Yep.
There's great swimming. And then they were offering cheap airfares, and that was exactly the time President Obama went to visit and said the water's fine, come on down. That's the only reason we went. So I got dosed down there. Ended up in the hospital 2 times because I think my heart almost stopped because it would everything would almost turn to black.
Wow.
And my blood pressure was at least, 190 over 90. It was unbelievable. There were a few times I literally almost died from it. And so I finally got to see this neurologist, and, he was kind of looking at me like, do you have a mental illness? What's going on? But he had the records that said chemical exposure, and, I explained to him, but it wasn't until I showed him the pictures, and I said, look at this. He goes, oh, my gosh, that's a chemical burn. So,
wow.
And that causes, all, the craziness and stuff. And then when they put you on prednisone, when your brain's inflamed, it just causes all kinds of things. But
oh, sure.
It took me almost 2 years, to get to a point where, I can function better. I ended up with polyneuropathy, so I still have blood pressure problems and all, but, holy smokes. So then I tried to get help, like a lot of people, just for medical expenses. I'm not greedy. I'm not looking for money. And I got declined from the Gulf Coast claims, that Feinberg was.
Oh, yeah.
That Mr. No, they said it was lack of documentation. I sent everything I could. I sent all the right paperwork. I used to be a clinical social worker, so I know what to send. I know what I need. And I got turned down just for medical expenses.
Wow.
And thank God my husband could afford it because if I wouldn't have got the care from the hospital to get my blood pressure down, I probably would have had a stroke. Because it hits the central nervous system, these chemicals. So, there's just, we could be on for hours. But so I went to that clinic in Louisiana, and I talked for 3 days. I was there. I talked to fishermen, different ones, and people had exactly a lot of the same experiences that I did. But there were people at death's door, and they still didn't get any help from that claims fund.
No.
So I knew since then.
I've got 2 questions for you, ma'am, and I know Joe does too. Number one, and I don't know if you said this or not. What part of the Gulf were you at? Was it Louisiana?
I went in the water in Destin, Florida.
So okay, all right, and okay. Now the second question I have for you: do you still have the photographic documentation of what you went through?
Oh, of course I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right, and it's stored safely somewhere, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah, and it's kind of funny that I got told to shut up at first, and kind of intimidated and stuff.
Sure.
But you know what? I didn't do anything with it because I'm not greedy. I just wanted medical care. But wow, with all this stuff happening, and then the big thing is, then I find out that these people that I talked to, I believe because the fishermen down there, and there's lots of other people, they had nothing to gain by lying to me. And they said the same thing. They didn't get care, but the different agencies, and I won't name them, they were lining up to do research on them.
Really?
Yeah. This
is
there's plenty of information about the core exit, and that was used as a cleanup method for the Gulf oil spill. It causes heart trouble, organ damage, bleeding,
internal bleeding.
Yeah.
It's nasty stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And just like the radiation from Fukushima, it's something we try to talk about when there's news on it, but this stuff like this gets lost in the shuffle of all the other things, dangers. we're talking about, and there is a lot of people who are affected by this. I mean, millions of people were affected by this.
Where do you
Definitely.
where do you stand health wise now? Are you having continued impairment from your exposure?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll hit me all of a sudden. The neuropathy, March all of a sudden, and the neurologist kind of, agreed with me, and he said, yeah, this probably is from the neuropathy. All of a sudden, I just fell. I was walking in the parking lot with my husband. We were looking for cars and my daughter, and I just fell.
Oh.
And it's something like the neuropathy kicks up. It affects your nervous system, and then it was that foot that I got the chemical, the exposure in, actually locked up, and I just down I went. And then right after that, I had heart issues, and it'll take me at least a week to recover. And I just had another one of those things, an episode. It's almost like a seizure kind of a thing. But the issue is, I showed the neurologist. Oh, and there's a research study done by the Geological Department at the University of South Florida that went on the beaches and used some type of a black light, and all the sand lit up. And he also showed, and you can access that online too. He shined it on someone's leg who had an exposure like I did, and you could see on their skin all these blotches where the chemical had actually entered, like through the skin.
That's incredible.
So in other words, it is. And I was hit by, so you figure, I went in the water and I walked somehow through the chemical or in a chemical. I was on the beach all week that had been, the Coast Guard did say that there's oil under the beach because it came in and it was soaking that area so much that it's underneath and there's no way they can get it. So when it rains, it brings it up. So I'm walking on it. There were the crunchy stuff on the beach. I talked to some people down there, and they said, this one guy, I was at the clinic, and I said, what was this crunchy stuff on the beach and discoloration of the sand? I said there were tan spots and there were like white spots, and he said before President Obama came and other ones, he said they were out spraying the beach with like a bleach substance. So I said, okay, so I got exposed to Corexit, whatever they sprayed on the beach to get rid of also the evidence of the oil that's underneath, and the volatile organic hydrocarbons that were, I guess it's like a gas that comes up off the water.
Right.
So I had another attack with that. The 4 days later, I got like, my husband and I were up on the boardwalk near there, and my throat actually closed up, my tongue swelled, and I got a hive on my face because, and the doctor explained to me, he said, because your body was already full of, these chemicals, and that kind of puts you over the edge when you're exposed to that.
Well,
somehow the oil.
okay, Pat, let's put this in context, if we can,
Sure.
in the larger scheme of things, because this is still an issue, environmental issue, if you prefer, or I suppose more appropriately, we're being lied to at every twist and turn here about different things.
Big time.
What do you think is going on in the larger scheme of things? Obviously, they don't want to hurt the tourist in this industry or the travel industry, so they say, come on down here, but, at your own peril. What do you see in the larger scheme of things? What do you see taking place? What's going on with this?
I honestly believe, from what I've researched, and I cannot, this is only my opinion, I cannot say whether or not this is true, but, I was obsessed for 2 years trying to figure out how could anybody in any government office in the United States of America have any kind of a conscience, tell people to come down, the water's fine.
Uh-huh.
I'll never get, okay, unless there's some reason. So, yes, okay, so to keep the economy going. But to me, they should have told people, at your own peril. You couldn't get harmed. But there was none of that. They lied and said it was okay. So you got that going on. I think it also was to not hurt BP because apparently BP supplies our military with oil and gas and all that. And that's my dog. Probably it wasn't all BP's fault, from what I can tell. I mean, they were given permits to drill in like a volcano, like the steepest part that they should never been in. But they were given the permits, so they're there. And either there's like that big lake of methane that was underneath. So either that methane gas was touched, and it came up and blew up the oil rig, or some of the fishermen down there said there were little Russian subs running around in there, and that Deepwater Horizon rig thing was owned by, Hyundai in South Korea?
Yes. Yeah.
So there's some connection there, maybe. But we don't, we don't know. But then the other part, to answer your question, is all of a sudden the oil, this Corexit was sprayed, the oil disappears. And so that way, maybe so BP wouldn't be as liable as they need to be, and the other companies, or it was used, kind of like there's no opportunity like a crisis. Hey, let's check out this Corexit, because apparently in the Gulf War, that was also done when Saddam Hussein let loose on all the oil so that our U.S. ships couldn't get over, and they used the Corexit, and it worked to get rid of the oil so our boats could get over. So maybe it was another experiment. Now, I thought, okay, great. They're doing whatever they're doing. But what about the innocent people that were harmed? Why didn't we get medical care? And the only thing is, what I can see is because they didn't want to give us care, they wanted to experiment on us. Not experiment on us, but in other words, to do research and see what do these chemicals actually do to people. We were guinea pigs, basically. Because if we weren't, we would have gotten medical care.
That would fit within the grander scheme of things, I believe. The experimentation and, of course, the ultimate objective of eugenics.
Sorry.
So, that's okay. But yeah. So wow, what a fantastic! I mean, what a incredibly sad but relevant story, important story here. Wow. Let me go back to your opening comment real quick. The New Jersey church service where they read from the Quran. Was this in what was this a Catholic church or a Protestant church or what was this?
It was a Methodist church, and it's a relative of my sister's, and they converted to being Muslims, which is their right, but they invited the family, saying that they were going to have a Methodist, since they were raised Methodist, a ceremony. So the family went there, thinking they were going to go to a Christian ceremony, because my sister said it, if it had been Muslim at a mosque, she wouldn't have been able to go, because it's just her belief she's a born-again Christian. But she got duped into it. She said she's sitting there with her children and grandchild, and there's a reading from the Quran, and she didn't know what to do. And I said, well, I would have got up left, because to me that would dishonor our God.
And therein lies the issue. It's commingling religious, the belief systems, and it's a deception. And Pat, I mean, you're right. I would have done the same thing. I would have had to leave, because I certainly can't put up with that. We're getting to the top of the hour. We got some other calls. Pat, any other closing comments? I mean, thank you for sharing your stories, but anything else?
Oh, sure. Just, thank you guys, because I think you help us stay sane. We can kind of understand what's going on, put things together, and just, I guess, for anybody who's out there, the Lord Jesus kept me alive through this, and I think to be a witness somehow. And I just want to put out there, even if you never have to feel like He's not with you, because even in the worst of times in your life, He's there. Even if you don't feel Him, and He'll get you through it. He'll protect you through it.
Amen.
And, just thanks a million, you guys.
Well, thank you, Pat, and call again, and we appreciate everything you said, and thanks for sharing your story with us, man. I'll tell you, we have to keep an eye out on that. And but thank you very much. We'll talk
you're
again.
Welcome.
God bless.
Okay, bye-bye.
I want to move on and hit this piece of news before we get to the break. this was I wanted to talk about yesterday. This is so important. You got to hear this from the New York Times. Attention disorder or not, pills to help in school. And this goes on to say, when Dr. Michael Anderson hears about the low-income patients struggling in elementary school, he usually gives them a taste of some powerful medicine, Adderall. The pills boost focus and impulse control in children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Although ADHD is a diagnosis Dr. Anderson makes, he calls the disorder made up and an excuse to prescribe pills to treat what he considers the children's true ill, poor academic performance, and inadequate schools. And this is what struck me. He says, I don't have a whole lot of choice, says Dr. Anderson, a pediatrician for many poor families in Cherokee County, North Atlanta. We've decided as a society that it is too expensive to modify the kid's environment, so we have to modify the kid.
Interesting.
So he doesn't have a choice. Who is telling him he must prescribe drugs, dangerous drugs, to kids who don't have problems? And we're going to get into this as well as going back to the free speech issue and more on Spanish. The Spain was downgraded today or yesterday, and they are on the verge of the worst case scenario.
Yes. And look, we have to look at what's going on in Spain, in Greece, all in that European part, part of Europe, because it's coming here. The economic aspects of the worst is coming here. And I know Lindsey Williams, we listened to him on Alex Jones. Look, frankly, I don't know I do know, of course, we do know based on our sources and open source information about the derivatives, about the financing of the debt, monetizing the debt. That's true. But about the gambling, about on the derivatives, I don't know. We're checking into that because that does relate to what's going on in Spain and Greece. So we'll be following up on that and letting you know what our sources are saying. Perhaps they will be consistent with Lindsey Williams, or perhaps they might have a different take on it. But folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and the Hagmann Report. Taking a break right now at the top of the hour.
We'll be back after a few short messages. Stay with us. We're taking the calls. People on hold, thank you for your patience. We'll be right with you on the other side.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
And folks, I want to just take a minute here to talk about a product that we're very proud to endorse. One of our sponsors, MindRegard. They have nootropic Mind Power. It's a cognitive supplement. I'll take 2 tablets once a day. I'll tell you what, if you have issues where, you're just not right, perhaps, you're on information overload to begin with, and you find yourself searching for words, find yourself going into a room wondering what I come in here for. Try this. Try Nootropic Mind Power. through MindRegard. That's mindregard.com. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the banner for MindRegard. Give it a try. You're going to notice a difference. I know I have. Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Hold on to your seats. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
And welcome back to hour number 2 of this Wednesday, October 10th edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. First hour, we had a call and covered some news headlines. Full bank of callers. We're going to go to them next. Right after I mention this article, I'll post in the chat room. New border regime is taking the U.S.-Canada partnership to the next level. This is from the Intel Hub. Beyond the border deal announced in December 2011 represents the most significant step forward in the U.S.-Canada cooperation since NAFTA. Dual action plans are further transforming trade, regulatory, and security relations between both countries. Over the next few years, various cross-border initiatives will be rolled out, with some beginning as pilot programs. The U.S. and Canada have laid the framework for a new border regime, which is taking their partnership to the next level and pushing the continent closer to a fully integrated North America security perimeter. The Department of Homeland Security and Canadian Border Service Agency recently announced Phase 1 pilot of the Entry-Exit program, which is part of the Beyond the Border Action Plan. It will include collecting and exchanging biographic information of third country nationals, permanent residents of Canada, and lawful permanent residents of the U.S. at 4 selected land border points of entry, or ports of entry. It goes on. They have a fact sheet stressing how this is an important step as both countries move toward a coordinated entry-exit system that will strengthen the border and immigration programs, support law enforcement, and accelerate the legitimate flow of people and goods from Canada to the United States across our common border. Now, my question is, I've written articles on NAFTA. I've studied this. Why all this extra measures for the north border while we leave the southern border wide open? But this article gets into the new TSA pre-check initiatives and other measures. But we'll go to the phones and go to area code 208. 208, you are live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, Joe and Doug.
How are you?
Speak with you again. This is Kate in Idaho.
Hi, Kate.
Good to hear from you.
How you doing?
Very well.
If it's okay with you, it may be too far past the topic, and if it is, that's fine. But early on, when I first plugged into the program here, you were talking about Obama and his Muslim connection.
Right.
Okay. Would you mind if I go back there briefly?
No, let's do that, because I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but go ahead. Let's go there.
You may well. I just sent, right after I turned it on here, I sent Joe an email and about an article that is on the web today called Obama's Ring. There is no God but Allah. Have you either one of you seen it or read it?
Absolutely. That's by
Yep.
Dr. Jerome Corsi. Yes.
Absolutely. I respect that man highly. And this gentleman, this Mark Gabriel, that did a lot of the work on the magnifications of this ring. And you read the story about he's worn it for years and years and years. It is not a wedding ring, really. But it says right on there in Arabic, that there is no God except Allah. And the man is a Muslim, and if he is elected a second term where he is then a lame duck president, you're going to see the mask come off. One other thing I'd like to mention in connection with this Muslim connection, it's also extremely prophetic. In the book of Revelation, where the 4 horses of the apocalypse are described, the very last horse that everybody and most Bibles like to call the pale horse, if you look at interlinear in the original Greek that it was written in, it is not pale. It's chloros, green horse. And the green horse, the rider of that green horse is death, and Hades, or the grave, follows along behind it. I mean, if you look at everything that goes on with these folks in their own countries, even among their own people, let alone so-called infidels, as they call us, and a few other choice names, you can see how that can very well apply to them. Plus, their color is green. And I noticed recently that a big conclave over in Rome that the Pope is heading up, they're all wearing green capes now.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't quite understand the significance of the Vatican and the green capes. Do you have? Can you explain that?
Well, he's been pushing for a long time for a blending of Christendom and Islam, and I think that it may have something to do with looking a little more acceptable, possibly to the Islamic crowd he's playing to. But it's just a warning. I know I've been screaming this bloody murder. I retired in 2003, and a good 6 years prior to that, the guys I worked with, I said, watch this closely. I said, you better tell your wives to get ready to go get measured for their burqas.
Huh.
And they said I was nuts, of course. Well, I'm not. And the more that he gets his Muslim friends, his Muslim Brotherhood friends, into the high echelons of the offices of this country, the more bearing they're going to bring to bear. It's already showing up in our legal system.
Yes.
That to eventually make Sharia law part of this country, just like they've done in Europe. And you're going to start seeing the true colors of this man come out, as well as the Muslims that are in this country that have been being quiet, biding their time.
We totally agree with that.
I know, I figured you probably would, but there's a lot of people out there that are still of the opinion that, it's a religion of peace. We just got to love them and welcome them into our society. There is no way that Islam is compatible with a democratic republic. It cannot be.
That's right.
And if any of you folks have listened to, for example, IQ al-Rasuli, I realize the man is hard to listen to because his accent is extremely heavy. But once you kind of get used to him, you get to where you can really start understanding him. This man knows that Quran, Hadith, and everything, inside out, upside down, and backwards. It's been his whole life. And people have asked him, well, why are you saying this? Because he won't tell anybody what his religious belief is, And I can't say I really blame him. I don't really care. He said his purpose here is to warn the Americans of what they're letting themselves in for.
Yeah, IQ is a great friend of our program. We've had him. We've interviewed him, and we have links to the archives on our archive page. And I got to tell you, IQ his website is just full of videos dissecting the Quran, and so it's a great resource for anyone who So indeed,
I have absolutely nothing against Arabs. matter of fact, when I was younger, I lived in a university town when I was young, and there were a lot of Arabs that were graduate students and stuff went there. And I mean to tell you, those guys, when they're young, are good looking.
Wow.
But I wouldn't touch one of them with a 40-foot pole, because even then, I had read enough to know a little bit about their belief system. It was totally, it's like gangrene in a what they call an infidel, and something that, it's just boggling my mind. These women in this country, that the feminist movement women, mostly, I prefer calling them bra burners. I'm still from that generation that call them that you don't hear them putting up a squawk. They're welcoming them with open arms, calling those of us that have read and realize what is coming down is absolutely terrifying, in this country. And so many of them aren't going to finally wake up and see it till they start acting out like they are in Europe and in their countries where they're the predominant nationality.
Well, and Kate, I think. No, look, I agree with that. I agree with the Islamic agenda, but I also think, and let me ask you this, Kate, in the final part of this. Don't you think, however, Kate, that Islam is going to be used as and this, I think we're positing this as well. Don't you think Islam is going to be used as a tool of the global elite to, number one, look what's happening in Dearborn and other places. They want to criminalize any type of blasphemy, any type of criticism of Islam. So this is a stepping stone to a one world religion, especially through the deception and getting people to merge, the gods.
I agree with you, and that's why I think you're seeing the Pope doing what he's doing.
Okay, that's good. Yeah,
okay.
Right. Because
I seriously believe, if you read the Bible close enough, and you've had people on, you've talked about this, and so has Rick Wiles on his program, that this person that everybody's looking to show up, this person they want to call the Antichrist, is not coming out of Rome, is not coming out of Europe. It's going to be of Semitic blood out of one of the Middle Eastern countries. And I seriously think that the Muslim movement spreading like it is and basically taking over these so-called democratic countries the way they have, particularly at this point in Europe, but it's coming here. It's already here. It's just now starting out like a new growth cancer. And I seriously believe it's moving towards that, and yes, a one-world religion that, with the belief system of Islam, it's going to be more Islam than it's going to be a combination of Islam, Christendom, and all the rest of them.
I agree, Kate. Well, very good. I thank you so much for your call.
Me talk.
Oh, God bless you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the call. Very good.
Have a good night.
Night. Bye-bye.
Well, and I think she's right on the money with that in terms of, but we see a lot of websites. They're very one-note songs, I guess, or very. They don't look beyond the factor of Islam. They don't look at the NWO component.
No,
and it's not that they're incorrect. They just don't explore the whole agenda. But very good. All right.
We'll move on to another call. Area code 856. I think this is Sheila.
Yes, it's me.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi.
What's on your mind?
The caller that was on, Pat.
Yes.
And that Methodist church he was talking about, that is Chrislam.
Yes.
They're merging with the church. Evidently, the pastors think that somehow they're going to be able to get along with the Muslims and whatnot. No, these people are waiting, and if they're going to try and take over the churches. They were very patient people. You know, Rick Warren started that. I've seen pictures where they've got the Koran and the Bible sitting side by side. No, these people hate Christians. This is a matter of them getting inside the church and at some point trying to take it over. That's what that's all about. And anybody that's in a church that's even thinking about doing it, run, because it ain't going to work. Rick Warren's got this thing where there's going to be peace and whatnot. No, ain't going to happen. But, Joe, you were talking about the Pope.
Yeah.
I saw him 3 weeks ago, and I found it rather odd. He made a trip to Lebanon, and they were rioting over there.
Yes.
And he was right in the middle of it. They took him right in the middle of that. And I thought, why would they take the Pope right in the middle of these people uprising over there? But that's what they did. But
now, what was their agenda for doing that? I suppose when we see stuff like that.
Some kind.
I'm sorry?
I don't remember what the visit was about.
But for them,
to me, like he's cozying up with the Muslims.
No, I agree with that. But again, for the sake of the larger agenda, I would suspect, you're looking at this, as you mentioned, Chrislam, which is just a huge deception that we all have to really be wary of. And you've got this, and I have to say this. I mean, I went to a seminary, so you've got the papacy, the Vatican, attempting to meld the Christian belief, and specifically the Catholic belief, with Islam, at least to the extent of more than a coexistence, but of a working coexistence, and it dilutes the Catholic doctrine. It dilutes the Christian doctrine. So that's indeed.
Well, not only that, but you've got the Pope. He's the head, and if he's telling the church, hey, this is okay, they're going to follow.
Yes,
some will.
Some, well,
the deceived.
Now we've seen some uprising with the church as well, with the Affordable Health Care Act and the contraception and the abortion issues, and there's some division there. But again, isn't this at the heart of everything? Isn't it interesting that this Obama regime is really just, it's divide and conquer everywhere, whether it's religion or politics or social issues, whatever it is, finance, it's divide and conquer, and the church is part of it.
Exactly. If that's all going to boil down to one world religion, and it looks like it's going to be Islam.
Well, or a combination, like a Chrislam thing, as you mentioned. Indeed, I agree with that. So, wow. Well, Sheila.
No.
Go ahead, Sheila. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I don't see him tolerating anything else. I know all these religions got to come together as one, but
well, they don't have to. I mean, it's no. I don't agree with that. I think that's their attempt, and again to the deception within the church in order to really to get everyone to go along and to use the church as a tool. As a new world order tool, they have to take the doctrine away from the true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's just
yeah.
So, well, Sheila, very good. I want to thank you very much. Your connection, we're cutting out here, so I want to bid you farewell. Thanks for your call.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're having trouble on the
phone lines.
The phone lines. It's not
probably a BTR problem.
Well, actually, I got a notice today about some sun activity, which I never got before from BTR. It's kind of interesting. So
thanks to a listener, Infidel, friend of the show, sent me this in an update or a breaking news story. J.P. Morgan CFO to exit Post. The CFO, their chief financial officer, is expected to step down and is likely to move into a different job of the bank, according to people close to the company. And and this is something we're continuing to see as a reshuffling of bankers and people inside the government, Treasury Department to the Fed, through the big six banks, the J.P. Morgan, et cetera, et cetera. But this is, and there are also questions or rumors if Jamie Dimon will step down. That's something we'll have to keep our eye on. And another article out of Zero Hedge, the Fed's sole purpose, keeping the banks afloat, and that is what they are doing, is propping up the U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar to avoid the inevitable end, which is an economic crash. And this is the plan this Tyler Durden,
to avoid the
right?
You just say
not to avoid, but to delay the crash of the economy.
Until when? I mean, how long can they possibly delay this? And what's the agenda behind the delay? Is it because of the election? We don't want to.
Maybe it could be a combination of things. A second system being 100% ready to be implemented. Maybe they need the right event to happen before they can do that.
But haven't we been arguing or positioning, asserting?
Yes, it will. That it will collapse.
But
nothing they can do.
But haven't we said that with this an economic collapse? And I'm trying to really soul search here. Haven't we said, and haven't we told listeners, look, an economic collapse around the time of the election could very well be like the trigger event to keep Obama in office, and now we're seeing, well, maybe they're trying to delay it now. Okay, so
we know,
were we wrong?
QE3 was a step that was taken on purpose in order to print money to keep these banks that are holding toxic assets going under, would be bankrupt right now if it wasn't for the Fed giving them money.
Right.
But were we wrong about?
Were we wrong? Were we incorrect by asserting that? I guess we were talking about this more of as a probability, possibility, whatever. But the economic collapse could be a trigger event that would keep Obama in office, especially if everything collapsed economically right before the election. Now we're seeing reports. Okay, they're trying to stave off this economic collapse. So then we have to look at what we've been saying, and perhaps were we incorrect? Were our observations incorrect, or our assumptions incorrect?
That is going to play out in the recent weeks, and if we were incorrect or asserted anything, I don't think we stated anything definitively about any kind of timelines or when an economic collapse would happen. But what we do know for sure is it's unsustainable.
Exactly. That we can say with certainty.
So knowing that it is unsustainable, we know that it will have to fail, be reconsolidated. To what end? We've heard anything from our own houses and our own labor being collateral for the debt to the gold at Fort Knox to, a lot of things. But
that's so intangible. I mean, that's so theoretical. I guess, really, I think what people are, and even me, I didn't mean to say even me, but especially me, I'm looking at, okay, well, what's going to, at the other end, at the end of this abyss, when the economy collapses, what are we going to be looking at as a currency? Are we going to be trading in, as I once said, beer and Skittles, or are we going to be trading? What's going to be the and right. I think we've come up with, based on my intelligence source and other research, I think we've come up with this basket of currencies, and this international thing,
right? And this also depends on how close we are to the beginning of the tribulation. I think too, because in the Bible it talks about a point in time where the rust and gold will canker, and the rich will be devastated about the loss of their money, and how it will eat their flesh. The silver and gold will rust and eat their flesh. I got to find that passage, but as far as the economy is the biggest
That's the biggest
variable as far as what can happen. You saw how they fixed the unemployment numbers for the month of September to give Obama a bump in the polls or whatever they were trying to do.
Right.
They can manipulate the numbers, but only to a certain extent before people will, speak out. You have whistleblowers. We're seeing people, respected economists, stating that we're on a fiscal cliff. On Neil Cavuto today, I think Peter Schiff was on there, or another congressman was on there, saying, why are we working, bankers' hours when we're talking about the future of our economy and the future well-being of our country? Why are they, taking so many recesses, and why haven't they passed a budget? Why are they being so nonchalant about fixing the economy? And there's variables that enter into that. Is the Federal Reserve Charter continuing after this year? How long are they going to be able to print $80 billion dollars a
charter
month?
wouldn't, or the Federal Reserve as it exists, if they would go to an international currency, would they not be absorbed into that international new world order, new global governance? Wouldn't they be absorbed into that? In other words, they would exist, just not in the same form that they're existing today. Or
it could be said. I just see. I don't know. I think certain things have to happen before we go under the complete one world economic system. But it's not out of the question that it happens rapidly. It could happen anytime.
Sure.
We are right now pretty much foreigners in a land that was once ours, that people, our grandparents, our ancestors fought and died for the freedoms and the belief system of this country. And it has been hijacked from within.
That's right.
At the warning of many leaders, and the continuation. You just look at Dwight Eisenhower's farewell speech. Look at John F. Kennedy's speech. So many presidents have warned about the military-industrial complex, the economy, the Federal Reserve, that it is just overwhelmingly clear that we are headed down the path of other countries. We are no exception when it comes to the economy. The Great Depression, they talk about, we had a huge industrial.
Right.
Then we don't have that anymore, that infrastructure. We've outsourced it to every other country in the world. So there's nothing to fall back on this time. Just so much uncertainty when it comes to this. And maybe it's a distraction issue for now, as whatever else gets set up to be brought in. We know that Obama's advisors have talked about some kind of event, like Bill Clinton with Oklahoma City and George Bush with 9/11. They talk about how, that's the only way Obama will really be able to reconnect with his base, is if something like that happens and it brings us all together. You asked me earlier, we were talking about the election. You just kept saying, I think Obama's going to win, if they have the election. And that changes day to day. Our thoughts change day to day. What the news tells us makes our thoughts change day to day.
We've got people telling us on the inside that Obama is resolute, that he's not going anywhere.
Right.
That's his posture. That's his position. That's his, and so So I believe that, but yet now we're looking at. Now we come to a point where we have to say, well, if those sources were incorrect. Now, were they incorrect because it was disinformation, or do plans change? Or, the objective is going to remain the same. The overall objective of the globe is not going to change.
Right.
I guess it's just how they are going to take us to that end result. It's kind of a...
What we have to look to is the Bible. What we have to do is pray. We see all this movement in the Middle East with troops, the countries being overthrown at a rapid pace.
Right.
This prophesied about, and I mentioned this the other day at the end of Daniel, where it talks about Ethiopia and Libya will be overthrown, and Ethiopia at his doorsteps. The leadership in Ethiopia changed. And I just learned about this, a couple days ago. The president, he was 57 years old, died unexpectedly, and another took power in September.
Isn't that interesting?
And what will that bring about? And So we need to pray for the discernment. We just need to pray that the Lord will take care of us, will give us the warning signs, which I'm sure to the people who are written in the book of life, He will protect, He will give them the warnings. And I think some people are getting them through visions and dreams, as He, says would happen. But we need to look through this through a multi-dimensional angle or multi-dimensional way, because there are so many different. I mean, you got the UN, the IMF, the World Bank, the Federal Reserve, all having a piece of our finances, all taking money out of the pockets of Americans for themselves.
As the UN, the global tax they're talking about.
Right.
So yeah, incrementally we're getting to that end point.
I mean, we see all the legislations in place, the NDAA, the Expatriation Act. You can't do you don't have your rights anymore. I read on there the other day the Bill of Rights for airline passengers that they're trying to draft.
Which is just ridiculous.
Right. Why would you need a Bill of Rights for airline travelers when they are airports that are in the United States?
And they're still under the Constitution.
Exactly.
So yeah, it doesn't, I mean, but in talking about this, and then I know we have to get to some callers, but in talking about this, I guess the whole point of this discussion is, we are attempting to be watchmen according to, as appointed by, as like Jeremiah says, and it's difficult because we can. It's if we keep sounding the alarm, and I think people get tired of this.
The alarm needs to be sounded because there is a problem.
Well, obviously there are problems, but it's people get tired of hearing, "Hey, look, the sky's falling. The sky's falling." Yes, it is, but what's again? There's a mental fatigue that goes along with that. What people have, and I think that we have to be very
can be counterbalanced through
prayer and through the Bible.
Strength. Yeah. The strength of the Lord.
I'll go with you on that.
We need to be putting our priorities straight. The Lord needs to be first. His word needs to be first. We have to take that. Then, with His word, that's how we look at the world. We follow the laws He commanded us to follow. We act the way we are supposed to act, and we ask for that discernment. We ask for the knowledge, and we hope that He shows us, as He has shown many people, as the prophets have written throughout history in great detail, even about His coming. I mean, you read the Old Testament, Jesus was prophesied about coming, exactly what would happen to Him, how He would die, everything was prophesied about before He came, and it was fulfilled, just like everything that is happening now was prophesied about and is coming true. Would you like to move back to the phone callers?
Let's do that.
I see we have about 30 people on hold.
Yeah, go ahead.
And thank you for being patient with us, callers. Area code 610. You've been holding the longest. You're on the air with the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 610.
This is me, John, again from Pennsylvania.
Yes, sir.
Well, I talked to you last night, but this show tops last night.
Oh.
It's amazing, though. It's so amazing. Now, we went from the golf. I got in a little late tonight, but the golf is important because that's not done. We know that. That's dying.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got the Pacific. It's being irradiated. So I already stopped eating most of the seafood that comes anywhere near, because I think we have trumpets going off. And if you understand the book of Revelation, you got the seals, the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 vials.
That's true.
Now, a lot of people look like, they say the seals open first, then the trumpets, and then the vials come last. Well, it don't work that way. While the seals have been opened, the trumpets are going off. And then at the very end, the 7th trumpet. Now that I believe is the rapture of the church, the resurrection, at the 7th trumpet.
Okay.
In the book of Revelation. And all the vials will be poured out after that, and that'll be the day of the Lord. And I looked for people teaching this, and I found some. One of them's dead. One of the favorite ones I listened to was David Myers. He was from, I think, Minnesota or Wisconsin. He died in 2010, no less in the hospital. And he knew this conspiracies. He knew about the Masons. He knew. I just wonder if he died under certain, I wonder if he was taken out. I don't know. But he still has his website up. It's called Last Trumpets.
Okay.
I think I got that right. But you could look under David Meyer. But I listened to him for years because when he started to explain the book of Revelation from God in 2007 that we're in the tribulation, and I looked up, I said, Lord, what do you mean? And he told me more or less, I didn't hear words. It came to me that look and see, and I said, wow, and I started looking. And when you go through the period of when our Lord was resurrected all the way up to now, somewhere on this earth there has been tribulation going on all the time. And when I look at it now, I see the 4 horsemen, the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale green horse. Which the woman who called in early, she's right, yeah. It was an ugly-looking horse, that's for sure, and that's death and hell followed it. And when you look at all the times and all the martyrs of Christ throughout the years, wow. And then the people in this country, especially the pre-tribbers, hey, we're going to be out of here before anything happens. Well, it's already happened. And that's what I see there. And with that was Pat from New Jersey. She's my neighbor over there. I wish I knew her better about the golf. Wow, that was, but that was more or less that correction. That was a test, just like she said. That's genocide, and eventually the people around the Gulf, they're going to have to move out of there. Same thing along all the shorelines. I listen to Steve every chance I have, and I know you had him on, and wow, what a time, though. Everything's coming together.
Yeah, it is coming together, and it is amazing to be living in these times, but we must remember what our duties are in these times, and that is, to pray, to help. You pray for others, to help others. We have to be living the example that Christ lived. We have to be the example that he was. And that is the only way we can be safe and have comfort in our soul and peace of mind. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we let you go?
Well, you said something right there, and it's all in the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the only way. That's the only way, because if I didn't know the Lord Jesus Christ, I'd be scared out of my wits for what I do know. But I came to him about, 40 years ago. Wow.
Well, John,
that's what I mean. He is the only way.
You're an inspiration, my friend. God bless you. Thank you very much for your call. What a great point.
I'll be calling because you people know what's going on, and that's so important. You got it right up here, signs of the times, and they're all around us.
Indeed they are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much.
God bless you,
Thank you so much, and have a great night. God bless.
God bless now. So long.
Very good. It's so important, as you said, as he said, you'd be afraid. And what's the best antidote for fear is knowledge, but it's also the knowledge based on the word. And that's really, I think that's so important because you can have knowledge, plain old knowledge. Hey, you can get that from the television, or I should say from the alternative media that speak the truth. But that element of the spiritual element that is, it's the spiritual element that's lacking, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's what we really have to pay attention to.
No, it is lacking, and it is sad to see so many people stuck up in or caught up with things of this world, the TV shows, the materialistic culture we live in. I have to wear the nicest clothes and I have to drive the nicest car so I can fit in and other people will like me. We only need to care about what one person on this world, or one person thinks of us, and that is the Lord. We do not need to please other humans on this earth. We do not need to fit in. And if people do not like the fact that, or call you, I've heard the name, what are they called? Jesus freaks, Bible thumpers, these terms used to talk about or marginalize people who are, very stern and strict the way they should be about their faith and practicing their faith. It's hard to deal with. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is the church's role. Also, we constantly mention that, but some of the things they don't talk about. I was reading, and the subject of astrology came up, and it's not good. Astronomy is, looking at the stars and studying them, and you have to have a knowledge of that. And that says in the Bible, these will be used for the signs, of course, of the second coming.
But astrology is totally
astrology.
Different.
Going to psychics.
Yeah.
Things like these are now acceptable almost around Christians. I mean, I know people who call themselves Christians or Catholics who would go see a psychic, who would have a tarot card reading, and do these sorts of things. We need to be much more disciplined and get out of things that have no value on earth.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I do recall, and I invoke her. I find myself invoking her name more often now than ever before, Kathleen Keating, when we were talking, when we were on the radio together, her saying, "Oh, the Ouija boards, man, what a terrible invitation to evil spirits, or to the dark side." And it's true. Tarot reading, palmistry, all of that New Age stuff. And I do know people who, as you say, profess to be Christians and say, "Well, I'm a big believer in astrology." And
it's one thing
how can you do that?
I mean, I love looking at the stars at night. I think the universe is beautiful.
But you don't plan your life around the phases of the moon.
When you get people who are, you see the, I don't know when this became popular, but you see it all the time where women say their name, age, and their sign, or people ask, "What's your name? What's your sign?" That culture, that mentality. That's something that one small thing that came to me. Yeah. When I was reading, and I just wanted to say that on air, because so many people, and I'm not talking about our audience, but so many people do get caught up in these earthly things. Exactly. And I even find myself thinking,
well, it's not even earthly, though.
Were to end today, if the world were to end right this second, what's the first thing I think about, as the things are coming down? And it's things of this earth. But, family and...
Oh, of course.
But that's not the reaction that I need to have. My first reaction, should be where my
headed?
Spirit is going,
yeah,
and
right.
I'm going to meet. And that's the kind of conditioning we have to get out of. We have to care less about this world, things of this world, and only about the spiritual. And that's.
Yeah.
And it's a transformation process. It takes time. We talked about this yesterday. How different fruits grow at different times. That's and right. Need special work. Some of them need extra work, more so than others, and that's how God brings us up.
But we are entering into a whole bunch of signs right now. Signs of the time, signs of the end of days. You look at the headlines. We were talking about Jordan. Mm-hmm. We made reference to what's going on in the Middle East right now. And I feel, in a sense, vindicated, if that's the right word.
Validated
a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the Libyan situation, the Syrian situation, what's going on. Now we see Jordan getting involved. We see talk about NATO. We see talk about the buffer zone for the refugees. This is all coming to pass. So at least the source that what we had talked about before about Syria and where World War III is going to start, I think we're seeing now the tangible elements of evidence or proof, not proof, but elements of evidence where things are lining up. And the end result, too, we can circle right back around. Again, this is an assault on our economy. Ultimately, it's the assault on our dollar. It's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins. It's all about the cabal
greed, the lust.
The cabal of bankers. And it's their objective. They are running things. It's not us. It's not even our government. It's the bankers that are running things and making this. But go ahead.
All right, we're going to go to the phones. We got about 15 minutes before we reach the break.
This program's going fast, by the way. I just can't believe this.
Area code 757. We're going to you. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Is this me?
That's you. It's you.
Hi, it's Cynthia from Virginia.
Hi, Cynthia.
I have an important question or thought at the end of this, which is a total different subject, but I just want to leave it with the listeners. I've been trying to think outside the box. But what I wanted to discuss is what Joe brought up about ADHD. I got custody of her when she was 5.5. Before then, she was up and down, in and out, all over. The mother just dragging her everywhere. I took her to a child therapist. She tested her, and she was diagnosed ADHD. We decided not to put her on medication. Another thing about ADHD or OCD, which is compulsive disorder, usually what they have when you're diagnosed with one, you've usually got something else. They call it comorbidity. So she was diagnosed ADHD and oppositional defiance disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't put her on medication. I took her, put her in private school from kindergarten through 8th grade. Christian schools, and they have the smaller classrooms, so therefore she got more attention than being in, say, a classroom with 20 or 30 children. She's been on the honor roll ever since. I changed her diet, gave her nothing but healthy foods, home-cooked foods, fruits, vegetables, juices, milk, things like that, vitamin every day. And she's an honor student, very artistic, musical abilities. She's in after-school clubs. So it's been a really success story, but I just wanted to share that. And they say that sometimes these things can come from the environment, their first 5-6 years of life. So, but I just wanted to say there is hope out there, and sometimes you don't need the medication. It's a good balanced diet, and they really need to be in a routine, scheduled home and task and chore list, and you have to stay consistent for it to work. They can't have the in and out and the up and down and going to bed all hours of the night and all kinds of craziness in their life.
And that's
so I'm hoping I can help others. So it was environment, I guess, in her case. She's never been on the medication. We haven't needed it. And I've had teachers and stuff look at me like, well, why didn't you? Because we decided not. Do you have a problem with her? They say I get notes on her reports, intelligent, kind, patient. Now, can you believe an ADHD child is patient?
Yeah.
So it's been a real blessing. Thank God we have her. But I just wanted to share that success story, and that's the way we chose to do it. And so far, knock on wood, and thank you, God, it's worked out. The other thing I wanted to ask, it's totally different. It has to do with the Federal Reserve, and it's private. Well, it's audit the Fed, it's get rid of the Fed, who's got the gold, why are they called the Federal Reserve? And it's always the same, but we're getting the same result, which is silence. Well, I just recently watched Aaron Russo's documentary on YouTube.
Yes.
I found that very interesting. And according to the 16th Amendment, I've got to do some more research on this, But they're saying that even IRS agents were saying there is no law about the income tax, the one where you exchange your services for a paycheck. And I'm kind of tired of having my soul sold to the devil by these people. If I'm going to sell my soul to the devil, I'm going to do it myself. So I've been thinking outside of the box, and I was just wondering, is it possible to have a class action lawsuit against the Federal Reserve to get our money back? They are private, and what they're doing is wrong.
Well, no, we agree with you. And by the way, folks, yes, and you can, for listeners who are not familiar with Aaron Russo, he has passed away, of course, a couple of years ago. But there are extensive YouTube videos or videos on YouTube, very good videos. But I know we had Ann Barnhart on the program, and she said she is stopping paying income tax. Perhaps not because of the lack of the constitutionality of it, but because of funding abortions, funding. Her tax dollar is being used for immoral and unethical uses. So you're correct. And who benefits from the income tax? It's the Federal Reserve. That's where your money goes.
Yes, and that's off our labor.
Correct.
And I'm going to do some research on this, and I don't care whether we class action, we win or not. I want to get it out there, the information to the people. There's got to be different ways to get it out there. I'm tired of it. I'm really tired of it. A friend of mine is going to stop paying her taxes because she's tired of it.
I think if we had a tremendous unified civil disobedience by withholding, not paying taxes, I really believe that we could bring we can get their attention, certainly, and I don't think it's a bad idea. But what happens is there are people that don't pay their taxes and they get. Well, look at what happened to Willie Nelson. I think he was. And I'm not sure of the circumstances right off the cuff here, but look, people they go after people like that with machetes. I mean, it's like using an Exocet missile to take out a canoe in a lake. It's overkill. But I believe, as you're saying, I don't believe that there's any law that requires you to pay income tax. Yet there's precedent that the courts use to say you've got to pay tax, and that's a whole I mean, we could spend a whole program on that.
Correct. It was a complex issue, and I plan to delve into this with some serious research. Because originally we didn't have income tax, but we still managed to maintain our government, our military. And from what I understand, the income tax is only used to pay the interest on our debt. And it's going to the Federal Reserve. If you get rid of these private bankers, the government can handle the money.
Well, that's correct. Right.
Yeah. So I just want people to think about that. And the movie's called Freedom to Fascism.
Yep.
And there's a couple of versions out there. But it's 2 hours, I think, and 26 minutes, and then there's one for an hour and 42 minutes. But it's really something to think about and get the word out.
Very good.
So, thank you. And
thank
have a nice evening.
Appreciate the call.
Bye-bye.
Folks, I was talking to the professor. Yeah, Professor Marianne, I understand. My source, and he was saying, look, what was the biggest event to centralize everything? And he had asked me this question, almost like a professor would a student. What was the biggest event? What was the one big event that centralized everything? And if you think about that, the enemy against the New World Order or the globalist agenda is decentralization. That's the enemy of the New World Order. But what the New World Order or the global agenda is to centralize everything. Well, how did they do that, or how was that accomplished in one stroke? Well, that was through the implementation of the federal income tax. Before that, taxes were collected on a state level, and it was not based on income. It was a whole different tax picture. Like I said, we could spend a whole program on that. But that federal income tax was used as a tool to centralize information. What a great database.
Yeah. It is the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the world, as a lot of people say. Moving on here, we got a couple minutes before we hit the top of the hour. Depopulation is real. U.S. death record reaches a high, and I was told this by a friend earlier in the week that they heard that more people are dying than last year, and it set a record last year, and this year they set another record.
It can be argued, though, statistically, as the baby boom population gets older, that it's a natural attrition.
Well, it says there are various agencies and proposals worldwide that are either implemented on or from the table of Henry Kissinger's National Security Memorandum 200 to Ted Turner's admission on video, "The globalists want us dead." In fact, this was the driving force behind the globalist mindset that sparked the idea of our new film, Shade the Motion Picture, that will be available this December. This is from Intel Hub, Shepard Ambulis. ABC reported U.S. deaths surpassed 2.5 million for the first time last year, reflecting the nation's growing and aging population.
See, again, that's what I immediately thought about that. But there's an element to that. And again, we have to read between the lines and read beyond what they're saying here, because there's more to this. Go on.
It says the increase of about 45,000 people or more deaths than 2010 was not surprising. The annual number of deaths has been generally rising for decades as the population has swelled.
Exactly.
If you have an older population, of course, you're going to have more deaths, said Quinn Kai, a University of Virginia demographer who studies population trends.
But okay, the objective, again, you're looking at the larger objective here. It's to get the population down, to call the population down to, get this now, worldwide, 500 million people.
Yeah.
So now to kind of meld what you're saying with, again, the larger picture here, you've got people, the globe, the people that think that they can live forever, or they're buying the future. These people, the people like, and again, please, I'm choosing my words carefully here, people like Bill and Melinda Gates, that mentality where I'm buying the future. You've got this exclusive club, very limited in number, who believe that they know what's best for the population. Why do you think this opens up a whole new conversation? Why do you think they're secreting away seeds and different things? Well, of course, they're expecting a calamity, but they're preparing. So when they get, when they come out on the other end, and the population has been reduced to 500 million, they can repopulate. And I want to be very careful when I say this, but think about the Nazi plan. The bloodlines and that purification, the Nazi plan. And I know people will start shooting at me, figuratively shooting at me, saying, "Oh, don't bring this stuff up." But no, it's that mentality.
Yeah, listen to this. Studies prove that GM foods and Roundup are lethal. A recent long-term French study from the University of Caen found that eating genetically modified corn and consuming trace levels of Monsanto's Roundup chemical fertilizers cause rats to develop horrifying tumors, widespread organ damage, and premature death.
See the pictures.
The study found that up to 50% of males and 70% of females suffered premature death. And it goes on to list a number of things such as 200 to 300% increase in large tumors on rats that were fed GMO corn. But interestingly, there are some facts here to point out that, one, the scientific studies have linked Monsanto's GM corn to organ failure. Two, Monsanto's employees refuse to eat the GM foods, and we talked about that before. That should tell you something.
And can you imagine at your house, folks? You're at your house, inviting all kinds of, like, your neighborhood people or friends over from the neighborhood, and saying, "Okay, we're going to feed you. We're going to have a great meal. We're going to feed you and you feed them food from, I don't know, the Chinese restaurant down the street, but you don't eat that. You eat, something different. That's kind of what's going on here. It's insane, or it should tell us something anyway. When they refuse to eat their own food, or the food that they're selling or providing to others, to the masses, the unwashed masses, they're refusing to eat their own food. Unbelievable.
Yeah, so the deaths are increasingly on the rise, and the death record is broken once again from last year, and the last time before that was 2008. So we see the trend towards the last few years higher and higher.
Yeah, it's quickening.
And I'm sure as the radiation from Fukushima circles around the globe, the GM continues to, poison us along with the fluoride and the heavy metals. This will continue to get worse and worse. I've heard 2.5 generations of eating GM and being, exposed to what we've been exposed to will render a population sterile and diseased and dead.
Interesting. Folks, listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Wednesday, October 10th, 2012. Thanks for hanging there with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Folks, those holding on the line, we're going to get you right after the top of the hour break.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have a long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You could go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com, or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
If you're stunned, you don't know what kind of gift to give to a friend or a loved one, I'm telling you, you must go to 4physics.com. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. This is your one-stop shopping palace. That's the way I can put it. I could spend easily an hour on this website. Innovative, fun, educational. There are games, books, weather instruments, unique time, jewelry, optical devices, laboratory equipment. Let me give you an example. We all know we can tell time. Well, you've seen those advertised. Did you know that you could tell time by the stars? At 4physics.com, you can buy a horologium nocturnum. This was a navigational device used in the 15th century by navigators at night to tell time by the stars. Made of bronze and pewter or gold and silver. Absolutely a stunning gift. I would be proud to give it to anyone. You must go to 4physics.com. Even if you're not stumped, that's 4physics. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. It's your one-stop shopping palace. Any problems that you have, I don't know what to get Grandpa, I don't know what to get my loved one, that's unique, you will find it at 4physics.com. Please take my word for it. Go to the website, but give yourself a lot of time because you're not going to want to leave. 4physics.com.
Hold on to your seats. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this third hour of us Wednesday, October 10th edition, 2012, of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We have went through 2 hours of calls and news, and I want to open this hour with a story that we mentioned last week or earlier this week. I think it was last week, about the meningitis. Do you remember this?
Absolutely. There's something very wrong with this story.
And this has been in the back of my mind. I've been seeing reminders, almost like it's being thrown in my face. This needs more attention.
Yes.
So calls for oversight grow as meningitis scare widens. This out of Reuters. Pressure mounted for great regulation of a little-known corner of the pharmaceutical industry in response to a meningitis scare that widened to 11 states on Wednesday, with the first case confirmed in Idaho. Since September 25th, recall of 3 lots of steroids produced by Massachusetts company, 138 people have contracted meningitis and 12 have died, according to the latest tally from the Centers for Disease Control in Idaho on Wednesday. The Idaho case was the first discovered in the western states, United States, because it was the hardest hit. The hardest hit state is Tennessee, with 44 people sickened with the rare disease.
I gotta tell you right now, and folks, this reminds me of the story of Judith Very Baker. And if you're unfamiliar, folks, with Judith Baker, she wrote a book called Me and Lee, referring to Lee Harvey Oswald. How I loved and lost Lee Harvey Oswald, and it reminds me, because she was a very promising up-and-coming cancer research specialist, and the youngest, as a matter of fact, to create this expeditious way of attacking cancer viruses, or working with cancer viruses. But ultimately, her assertion is that the CIA and the government twisted that around and created this cancer as a weapon, a kind of weaponized cancer. So this, to me, Joe, it just reminds me of her account. And she wrote I couldn't put the book down. I mean, 400 pages. I think I read it in 2 days. I was just really sucked into this. And of course, we had Ed Haslam on our program, Dr. Mary's Monkey. Look, the experimentation with things like the cancer and other viruses, the weaponization of these viruses. Look, I think this is so underreported here.
No, it is, and that's exactly what I was thinking. As we see, the caller Pat talked about the Corexit,
yes,
and it being felt like it was being turned into the people who were sickened by the Corexit were being turned into test subjects, and we see that different vaccines hold different chemicals depending on where the shipment is going to. That's been verified on our show. Even somebody who worked said that. Now, are we being tested like guinea pigs? Yes. I mean, they even have done this and continue to do this to our military personnel. So if they do this to the ones who fight and put their lives on the line for the safety and security of this country, what are they doing to us, the ones that they describe as useless eaters? Just imagine. But they're calling for an oversight panel. They say, we urge Congress to give the FDA the authority it needs to assure these kinds of outbreaks do not happen again, said the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, who declined to be identified because of an ongoing investigation. This followed leading U.S. House and Senate lawmakers from both parties asking federal health officials on Tuesday for briefings on the outbreak as the first step toward legislative action to strengthen FDA safety regulations. And
anyone, by the way, and how this affects you, anyone with spinal injuries. I've received steroid injections numerous times.
13,000 people have received injections to relieve back pains and
from
other complaints.
From that one pharmacy.
Yes.
Or that one originator of this steroid. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and it says for the first time on Tuesday, Tennessee state health officials gave an estimate of the rate of infection among the patients who received injections from the recalled steroid supplies. Approximately 5% of the patients treated with the suspect medication in Tennessee have contacted meningitis. That's from Dr. Regan, the chief medical officer for the Tennessee Department of Health.
Wow.
And he says, we expect that most people who were exposed to this will not develop the fungal infection. The rate of infection is overall not known. Meningitis is an infection of the membranes covering the brain and spinal cord. Symptoms includes headache, fever, nausea. Fungal meningitis, unlike viral bacterial meningitis, is not contagious. The outbreak has highlighted a gap in regulation of so-called compounding pharmacies, which are facilities that take drug ingredients and package them into medications and dosages for specific clients.
Right, and we've got those here where we live.
Yeah.
In fact, in Buffalo as well. I mean,
look,
they're all over the place.
And there's other ways to get this sickness, too. I think eating undercooked pork, if I'm not mistaken, maybe not the specific strain. I'm not sure exactly how meningitis is made up. But
in this case, you've got, and I'm not so sure it's a question of lax oversight. Again, this is underreported, and I think that there's more to this story than just, I think Judith Mary Baker, think that whole 1960, 1961 cancer research where they weaponized the cancer virus. It's just, this is how it's one more piece of a seemingly unending puzzle.
Yeah. Moving on, the mother of the slain State Department official is tired of being lied to and stonewalled by the Obama administration. Sean Smith was the State Department official, and his mother is now speaking out about this. And there was an interview done on CNN.
I'd be angry too if it was my child or my loved one. I would be very angry. You've got, and even today, my goodness, if you checked the Drudge Report to see this morning, to see the headlines, and of course, we're barraged with headlines about how the State Department has been lying and how Ambassador Rice has been lying. Everyone connected to this is lying, and boy. I'm sorry. It's hard to accept. It's difficult to accept anything that the government is saying about this, and I don't think we should accept anything about this.
No, and it's constant. I mean, it is just we are being lied to about everything, but especially it is heartbreaking to see the 9/11 victims' families who have questions, who want additional investigations, to be mocked, ridiculed, marginalized by the media, the politicians. All those people, say the investigation was complete, fully, and there's no need to look into anything else, even though probably 80% of the evidence was overlooked. Things like this, this could have been avoided. But what is more important? They're playing politics between the different departments and between the two parties, and they're trying to blame Paul Ryan's budget to Hillary Clinton and back to the funding of the Mujahideen. I've seen the excuses for the problems.
Right.
This reaching so many different points, but what's important is we're not being told the truth. We need to find the truth for ourselves.
And have you noticed, though, you've got Rice coming on and Clinton, no matter who it is.
And then they could just...
They repeat that same narrative.
Yep. It's the terrorism thing.
Wow. It's almost as if...
They repeat it enough so it's ingrained. And I think we read documents.
This? Do they believe it? Or do they actually believe what they're saying?
I don't know.
Wow.
Some might, but we've read the documents where they say, use the mainstream media to constantly hammer down a point until the people believe it. And I think in Aaron Russo's documentary that the last caller mentioned, he talks about his relationship with one of the Rockefellers.
Yes.
And
was it? Yes.
It was one of the Rockefellers.
Yes, it was.
And he gets into the goals and what's going to happen. And this interview was done a long time before the Libya and Egypt crisis, as Aaron Russo died, I think, back in the 2000s,
maybe, or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He said that not David Rockefeller, one of the Rockefellers that he was friends with, told him that it wasn't just about Iraq and Afghanistan, that they were going to go into a multiple number of countries. And this is in the documentary. And he says Libya, Egypt, he names the countries. And he lays it out that the whole plan at the end is to get everybody microchipped, to do away with the paper money so everything can be tracked, traced, every dollar accounted for and controlled. Right. Where the point that if you disagree with what they are saying or doing as the authorities, they can turn off your chip or shut off your ability to transact. And so freedom to fascism, anybody who hasn't watched that,
I just want to bring something else up. Aaron Russo did die, passed away in October of 2007. But one thing, we were talking about weaponization of viruses, including but not limited to cancer, which Aaron Russo had contracted bladder cancer. And Alex Jones interviewed Aaron Russo, and I believe that this is open source or is documented on the internet. Aaron Russo had said, "Look, I've been threatened with my life," because he did, as you pointed out. He was friends, or one of his people that he was talking to was one of the Rockefellers.
Yeah, Nicholas Rockefeller. Right. Thanks to those in the chat room.
Okay. So there's this element of uncertainty here. Obviously, bladder cancer, people get bladder cancer, people get cancer. But we also know, again, the weaponization of things. So, just like Breitbart, folks, let me toss this out to the people in the interactive chat feature that we have. Are you satisfied that Breitbart his death was natural? I mean,
boy, that's kind of a weird way to word it.
Well, I mean, okay,
we understand.
From a heart attack.
Yeah,
I'm increasingly having difficulty accepting that. Now, I might be totally off base. I have no inside information, but looking at the descriptions of how he was found, and having found my share of people that have passed. Or having arrived as they passed from heart attacks or whatever. I've never seen a person the head was all red and then with kind of a white stripe around his head as described. So, I've got a question too about that. I've got a question whether Breitbart was actually murdered or if he
it's a valid question.
Causes.
The coroner, one of the coroners, ends up.
Yes, yes. Yes. I think it was
from a poisoning
photographer, or one of the people there.
Oh yeah, well, he worked in the coroner's office.
Right.
He died of poisoning, and that was never investigated. The result, they said it was natural causes, but he was poisoned.
And if I can personalize this just a little bit, talking about people that have been in positions of looking into suspicious deaths. In 2002, when I went to when I became certified in blood spatter analysis, I attended class with O.C. Smith. Now, he was the medical examiner of Shelby County, Tennessee. Nice guy. I mean, this guy, I'll tell you what, I got along fabulously with O.C. Smith. O.C. Smith, 2 weeks after I had seen him last, was found. But by the way, it was in 2002. That was during the time when they were investigating some of the dead scientists, and one of the dead scientists was in Shelby County. Supposedly stopped his car on a bridge, jumped into the river, and killed himself, and so on. But he was in the process of ruling on the deaths of at least two people that died suspiciously connected to. One was a dead scientist, one was a DMV worker. But they found O.C. Smith tied up in barbed wire with a bomb on his chest at the Shelby County Medical Examiner's office in Nashville. And I mean, again, I feel like I know Mr. Smith from, the 50, 60 hours that I spent with him. and they ruled, the federal investigators ruled that he did this to himself, that he tied himself up with barbed wire, and he put a bomb on his chest.
It's like it's people
ridiculous,
who shoot themselves in the head 3 times, and they rule it a suicide.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because wow, it's just
the D.C. madam.
Yes.
Those who are familiar with her, her friend apparently hung herself, and she allegedly hung herself after making it clear that she was not intending to commit suicide, and she did that on the Alex Jones show. But she was found later hung in her mother's shed, and by her and her best friend also being found hung. The statistics of women who commit suicide, they hardly ever hang themselves, and it's usually by pills or I think by a gun. But hanging is for women is rare, especially when
anomaly.
There are 2 very close people involved in a case where they are in a position to expose the government, in her words, expose the government in ways that they absolutely don't want to be exposed in, to be found hanging, and along with her partner. It is very shady.
And I think the reason this is
thousands of these.
Yeah, I think that we're entering into a time period now where I think we all have to be aware that there are forces out there, that dark, evil forces. Not to be dramatic about this, but we have to look at everything as having a potential sinister element to it, that we can't take anything at face value that we're seeing. And to heck with the conspiracy label, conspiracy theorist tinfoil helmet label. Let's look into these things. Let's search, research, investigate, and arrive at conclusions based on facts, and not be deterred by those people who say, "Well, you're just a conspiracy theorist." Well, no. All we want is the truth. Yeah. Because today it's nothing but a series of betrayals and a series of sinister aspects to things. So that's what I wanted to tell you. But but back to that mother. It's sad that where she's not getting answers, and they go on the air and say, it's because of this video and this and that. And,
and then today they come out and say, "Oh, we never said that."
Yeah, exactly.
Even though they're on tape, over and over and over again saying it.
Now you've got something here I know that we need to get into.
Yeah, thanks to some listeners in chat. Thank you for posting this and bringing it to our attention. The executive order from the president regarding authorizing the implementation of certain sanctions set forth in Iran, Threat Reduction and Syria Human Rights Act of 2012, and additional sanctions with respect to Iran. This executive order is 13622, I believe, and was issued today.
So what does this executive order do?
Well, it does a lot of things. And just by giving it a once-over already, it talks about sanctions with people or countries who trade with Iran. Let's see.
All right. So there's the sanctioning.
Financial
but
sanctions,
we already have
trade
financial sanctions with Iran.
Yeah.
So what's different about the sanctions that we have and this executive order?
We're going to have to go through
the Syrian component.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. That is more than I knew, and we're going to have to go through and read this. But what they are doing through sanctions, or trying to do through sanctions, is to completely cut Iran off from the rest of the world. And we've seen this before as a tactic of our government. But they are going to, by doing this, this is like a form of war. This is a tactic of war, a prelude to war. It starts with the sanctions. It starts with a no-fly zone. It starts with, what we've seen happen in Libya, in Egypt, in Syria, how that took its course. Now, Syria, we're seeing it, and Assad is fleeing to Russia, as I heard on Rick Wild's show from yesterday, that he will seek asylum in Russia because he can no longer maintain or be safe in his country.
Very consistent with what we were talking about. We are fighting a proxy war with Russia. Mm-hmm. And people, and I was warned about this. If you say that, without really explaining, filling in the blanks, people are not going to believe that. But essentially, that's. And when I was on the Chris Baker show today, I had 15 minutes or 10 minutes basically to make the case of how we are how we are fighting this proxy war with Russia, and even that didn't give us enough time to really get into the nuts and bolts of this proxy war. So there's. Look, yeah, it would be natural for Assad to take sanction in Russia if that was the case, and of course Iran, the Iranians too. But
interestingly enough, in this Section 5 of this executive order, it says the Secretary of State, in consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of Commerce, and the United States Trade Representative, and with the President of Export-Import Bank of the United States, the Chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, and other agencies and officials, authorize and impose on a person any of the sanctions described in Section 6 or 7 in order upon determining that person. But what is important here is the governors, the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. And I could have read that wrong the first time. And let me go down here. It looked like they were talking about making sure that they were cut off from Federal Reserve funds, but I know they do not have a central bank.
In a convoluted way, I kind of followed that. Yeah. Despite that, I kind of followed with where you're going with that. Folks, I just received a bit of news here. I think that it's important for us to talk about this. I won't say at this point. I won't say who, but someone in China who's in the military, not now communist China. An individual in the military has been transferred with his platoon, but they are not saying where they're sending him. There's a lot of tension going on, and we're hearing rumblings about some increased tension between China and the United States now.
Well, this has been ongoing. And when I say ongoing, I will pull up this article. And if I remember correctly, China told his army to prepare for war with the U.S.
Okay.
And let me see when this is dated.
Yeah, in fact, that's true. And so we have to now know what's the deal with that. And I know Alex Jones had talked about that. And in fact, I think Lindsey Williams had talked about this with Alex Jones. What is the deal about that? Look, Turkey should prepare for war. Syria, Russia, China. Here we go.
Yeah,
I mean, the depopulation effect. It's.
And I mean, this is coming out of the 2 hours ago from the Washington Times. Want peace? Prepare for war.
And now that I got to tell you, that was a mantra back in the early days of the Cold War. It's peace through military strength. It's not a new plan.
GOP presidential nominee Mitt Romney's call for peace through strength was right on point. Romney's peace through strength comment and analysis Tuesday, now defunct Strategic Air Command's motto was "Peace is our profession." During the Iranian hostage crisis, if President Carter had sent a back-channel message to the mullahs that either the hostages be released within 48 hours or the defense establishment of Iran would be reduced to rubble, the hostages would not have spent 444 days in captivity. The hostages were released immediately after Ronald took the oath of office because the mullahs feared President Reagan would have turned something in Iran into rubble. It goes on, it says, when the United States was gearing up to liberate Kuwait after Saddam Hussein invaded that nation, there was a great fear that Saddam might use chemical weapons against U.S. troops. President George H.W. Bush had Secretary of State James Baker quietly inform Saddam that if he used chemical weapons, portions of his country would be destroyed. Saddam didn't use chemical weapons. There is nothing in the world like an American strength and presidential resolution to make dictators think twice before acting contrary to the best interest of world peace, depending on the United Nations. is like depending on the debating society to install fear in the karate club.
Well, in the same thing here, in that same vein, folks, have you heard about this? I'm sure you have, but let's put it in context. Again, context is everything. The United States today, we're sending military troops to the Jordan-Syrian border to bolster that country's military capabilities in the event that the violence escalates along its border with Syria. So we're sending troops to Jordan.
And think of this. Why is Leon Panetta not announcing the United States from the White House, the Pentagon? Why is he doing this through a NATO conference, through the United Nations?
Exactly.
Why do we see, we saw Panetta say in front of Congress.
Well, yeah, that's right. He made this.
They don't have to go to Congress to go to war.
Yeah, he made this announcement during a conference.
Where's
NATO
the approval
of
from Congress on the troops being launched?
There hasn't been any approval.
Okay, well then, is this a violation of the War Powers Act?
Well, then everything from since World War II forward has been a violation of the War Powers Act.
Okay, well then, obviously, we know Obama won't get impeached for anything he does, because people are afraid for whatever reason, or agree with him going along with the plan. Who knows? But see, continued manipulation of the U.S. laws, and it's amazing to me how they can use the laws. NDAA, say if we are associated with the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, or associated forces, we can be indefinitely detained without evidence, phone call, trial, and be executed. These people can fly money personally to Al-Qaeda themselves, and they're okay. Give them weapons, they're okay.
Right.
It's the same, hypocritical. And now this is a dangerous precedent being set. Not getting Congress authorities for war is dictatorial powers.
But see, what bothers me the most out of this is Panetta is talking now. The words are coming, or the catchphrases, you can see them based on the context we've been providing through our show. Hopefully, I'd like to think that anyway, where Panetta is saying, look, we're concerned about Syrian President Assad, his arsenal of chemical weapons. Now that phrase is being introduced now, chemical weapons.
So are they going to blame Assad when he's been in Russia for 2 weeks?
Well, of course,
if chemical weapons are released?
Because, look, we know Libya was a storage facility for weapons and fighters, to assist the rebels in Syria. They were moved to Syria, and who moved them? Well, the United States did. So there you have it. We are creating the problem, or we're creating the solution, or at least the ostensible solution, as it would appear to the people of the United States and the world, under the pretext of assisting and being the good guys, when in fact we created the problem to begin with. And that's the Hegelian dialectic at play here. So that said, Joe, do you want to go back to the phones? I think we've got some people on hold here.
Sure, go ahead.
Which button do I push? You better push the buttons.
We're going to go to area code. Let's see. Area code 214. I'm not sure if we went there yet. 214, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, guys. Jan in Dallas.
Hi, Jan.
Great show tonight.
Thanks.
A great show, and callers. I thought I would mention it's the 50th anniversary of Vatican II, and maybe about the 112th Pope possibly being named Peter the Roman. And
oh yes, okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And Andrew Breitbart, I draw those conclusions even if I didn't know any facts, possibly. And Doug, you mentioned arsenic with that tech, and you wondered why would they use something so obvious, and it was how better to get out a message.
That's true. That's very true.
You said that. And just some great callers, and I thought so much the things that they've also believed and talked about tonight. And on a lighter note, a friend of mine who's on Medicare this week called to fill an application for Medicaid. She had to do it over the phone. At the end of the application, they wanted to know if she was going to vote. She said yes, and they wanted to know who for. And she laughed and wouldn't tell them, so...
That was a legitimate. I mean, well, wait a second. Wait, you're kidding me, right? You're making a joke.
I wish I were.
Oh.
No, she was with me, and it's a yes and all the questions, and then I heard her say, yes, I've got my voting card, so I knew they asked something about voting, and then I said she didn't really, did she? And she said, yes. My friend laughed. She said, I'm afraid to tell you because she's going to vote straight Republican and her family's Democrat. And so, no, she'll get the form in the mail. I'll ask her I'm sure that wasn't on the application. I just thought it was maybe some sort of survey.
Wow. That's interesting. I mean, yes. Boy, I thought I was having chest pains before. Now, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So the game's fixed. Everything's rigged. Look at that.
Oh, as David Horowitz says, the radicals, they're dangerous people.
Heck yes.
They're not liberals. He's a liberal. They're radicals. They're dangerous. And
my word.
Nice to hear about Paul Williams coming out with a book. I thought about him and being at the forefront of being aware of the terrorists and bombing our cities. And he was kind of alone out there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was for the longest time. And I remember first meeting him in Toronto several years back. And I got to tell you, it was an interesting meeting. He had a lot of facts, and he had been alone. He was a trailblazer in his investigation of certain elements of Al Qaeda in Canada and here in the United States. So yeah, look for that book in the first part of 2013. It's Crescent Moon Rising, and I got to tell you, it was a fascinating book. I wish I could share it with everyone today, but. It's not even published yet, so it's going to be great. It's going to be a good book.
I sure will. Well, great show and great callers, guys.
Well,
have a good evening.
God bless you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
As usual, it's Jan's great and information's great, but boy, that's kind of unnerving.
All right, we're going to move on here. We have a caller. Don't think we got to this one. Area code 731. You're live on the HAGMANN and HAGMANN Report.
Okay. Hey, Doug and Joe, this is Lucy from Tennessee.
Hi, Lucy.
I just, you were expressing maybe concern about an economic crash and maybe that you had misinformed us. Well, I think what you are informing us is things that we are taking to the Lord in prayer. And y'all are the spokesman, and then he has us pray about it, and some of the things change. So I we hold utter respect for all that you say. So down on that, and I did hear Lindsey Williams last year say that if the elite decided that Obama had gotten too big for his britches, so to speak, that they would, the news all of a sudden would start changing, and that things I don't have TV, but that things on the networks would start coming out disagreeing with Obama, and I think that is happening, and he said that Romney would be put in if that were the case. So, not that, like we all know, there's not that much difference, but there would be more time. And also, I wanted to say that this just shows how arrogant Obama is, because I got a Party message today that Obama, when he walked off of the stage of the debate last Wednesday night,
Yes.
he believed he had beaten Romney. And he believed it totally, and he could not, and he still does. He has no conception of reality.
Wow. You know, I can almost see that if he was, I can almost see that thought process if he was thinking, well, you know, I pointed out the fact that the Romney was lying, and I wanted to be civil about it, and of course, you know, his posture, he was taking notes, and I can see how that would, how one could delude themselves into thinking that, and I say delude because I don't know what other word to use.
Well, or depraved.
Right.
He is depraved. And as far as Bright, I believe he or William Ayers had that set up, and we know that Obama has killed several people, or had them killed, from Jeremiah Wright's church, because they were going to come out and expose some things about Obama. On a higher note, I want to encourage everybody on the line. Yes, we have poison. We have all sorts of stuff. But in God's Word, in Mark chapter 7, Jesus said, it's not what enters a man from outside that will defile him, but it's the things which come out of him. These are the things that defile a man. And then in Luke chapter 10, verse 17, and 18, and 19, Jesus said, nothing, I give you power over everything, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. And when I was pregnant with my third daughter, I had been taking blood thinner because I had blood clots, and the doctors tried to get me to abort her because they said she was going to have brain damage and all this mess. And the Lord gave me that verse. He said, nothing will harm this child. And everybody wanted me to abort her.
Wow.
And she is, the Lord gave me her name. It was to be Ruth, because she would be a friend to many. Today she's 34 years old. She's married. Not one thing was wrong with that child. She teaches school. She loves life. She loves children. But, you know, we have got to ask the Lord to give us verses to hide in our hearts, because these poisons, they do not have to destroy us. I mean, this is all spiritual warfare, and the enemy would love to kill us and to steal us and to destroy us and take our lives. But if we can hold on to some words of God, we'll make it. We'll make it no matter what. Even if everything we eat is poison, He can protect us. So I just wanted to encourage everybody on the line about that.
Amen.
Love it. Lucy, as always, you provide us with wisdom and certainly spiritual guidance, and we thank you for that. Wow.
You're welcome.
And Lucy, I want to tell you, I appreciate very much your emails. It keeps me on top of things, and I do. I mean, I look forward to your various news tips and your. So it helps, it always helps, and all of our listeners, but thank you very much, Lucy, for all you do, for keeping us posted with things.
Thank y'all, and just praise the Lord. The word says God inhabits praises of His people, And I think right now it's time for us to begin praising the Lord. And all that fear and all that anxiousness will leave. And just praise Him. That's the only way we can win this battle.
Exactly.
So, God bless you.
God bless you. Take care. Thank you, Lucy.
Thanks, Lucy. Good to hear from you.
Yeah. You know, it's so great to, again, I look at our listeners as an extended family, and I think it's so great to hear,
absolutely
to hear from people, and again to is this a word to scripturalize, but to scripturalize the current events. I think it's very important to do so. I think it's very important to look through to the current events through the prism of the Bible. And also to see where we're at. I mean, it's kind of like a.
We need to study our Bibles. We need to know them inside and out. We need to be working to be better every single day spiritually. And, there are only a few ways to do that. And one of them is to read your Bible, to ask for understanding on issues that are not clear. Do not search for men's answers and things. Search for the Lord's answers and things. And give your will and your life to the Lord. And that is as simple as it gets, but it is not as simple as it sounds, because we are human, we are sinners, and we have to overcome that. That is what we need to do on this earth, is to through faith and understanding in the Lord Jesus Christ, we can overcome that about us, that flaw. And He gave His life so that we may be saved. Through grace, by faith through grace.
Exactly.
Or by grace through faith. And not by works, not by, just by grace and faith.
And we, Lucy had said about the about her daughter too, and the blood thinner, you've got to save your own life, you've got to abort your child, and she's fine. She's a wonderful grown up lady now, her daughter, that is, and I think it's that faith element that would get you through that. So we have to take her words and internalize them as well, because when faced with a crisis like that, you've got to turn toward the bigger picture and the grace of God. So and I look at these headlines. I mean, look, it scares. I mean, it frightens me. It concerns me.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like
it's
outside
concerning, frustrating, and what we've been told versus what we've been told through our schools and the TV, the culture of our society, through friends, is completely different than what we're told in the Bible. And there's never been a greater gap than there is now between the Bible and societal values and the biblical values and laws.
And that's intentional.
Correct.
That's by design.
And it is the deception. And it is one of many deceptions. And they are continuing to bring people down with them. And I say they, I'll just keep it simple. The evil ones, the godless ones, the ones against God. They will bring their own mothers down to hell with them. They do not care. They have no regard for human life. They have no regard for morals or ethics. They have no regard for Jesus, His word, or His sacrifice for us. They have regard for treasures upon this earth, for treasures of their own spirit and ego, and to their God, Lucifer, the one they worship. You remember when the Pharisees were talking to Jesus, and He was explaining to them, about prophecy, and they were talking to Him, and He said, "You do not know me. You are of your father." And He was talking about the devil. But one thing we must always do, like I will continue to reiterate, is read the Bible every day. Try to remember to say grace before every meal. I mean, little practices can take us such a long way, as long as the way the media pounds in our head that there's a war on terror, that there is, boogeymen everywhere, we have to invade all these countries, the way that they just hammer us with these messages. this is the same intensity we need to hammer away at the Bible and learning of what's inside of here. And the signs of the times have never been more important to do it now, if you haven't done it yet, because we are not promised a tomorrow. We're not promised the next week. Even if the world doesn't end individually, none of us are promised any amount of time, as a number of things can happen to us to take our life away, whether it be disease, an act of violence, anything. There is no true stability in this world except in the Lord, and you'll be stable after or in your eternity. You know for sure you will not. You know where you're going, and you do not want to be lukewarm. This is not a time to sit on the sidelines. People need to pick a side now. It says in the Bible that it would be for Sodom and Gomorrah, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, than the people in the day of judgment who lived in the end days. I think it even says that it would be better that you were never born than to be lukewarm. And that means we can't be afraid of the threats posed by whether Muslims or anybody, the government, when it comes to speaking our freedom of religion, worshiping and proclaiming the word of Jesus Christ. Pastors have been arrested on the street corners for preaching, and a pastor was arrested for preaching on a street corner after a woman flashed him. We've talked about this, and he was arrested for disorderly conduct because the cop said his preaching led to the woman, which is
it's a very convoluted.
Right, that is a dangerous road that they are going down there by asserting that. But Christianity, free speech, the way we know things, our way of life is under attack. And if there could be any good that will come from this, I hope it is that just more people find the Lord, because they're running out of options. You can only say, the people who believe UFOs are going to come save us, if they have a fake UFO.
It goes back to what Steve Quayle says.
Yeah,
you can't fix the political, or there's no spirit, or no political problem, or
no political solution to a spiritual problem.
Right, that's exactly right, and I think that we have to bear that in mind as we go through this. And again, look at everything that we're talking about. We have talked about tonight, and all of the headlines with the how we're sending troops to Jordan. All of this. How does this line up with Bible prophecy?
Well, I open right here. Zechariah chapter 12, verse 3.
Yeah.
And in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone.
That's right.
For all people.
Exactly. But hold that thought, because nowhere, for example, nowhere in the 4 years that Obama has been president, really, has there been any meaningful dialogue about Jerusalem or about Israel and the Palestinians. Just as nowhere in that debate between Romney and Obama, isn't it interesting, where they talked for that length of time and never once mentioned the Federal Reserve, never addressed that, never addressed the true economic threats to our country. So it's all, again, it's all a sideshow. It's all diversion. But what you just read about Jerusalem being a burdensome stone, how true is that today? That's never been more true than it is today.
That's exactly right, and it will continue as we see NATO in sending troops over to the Jordan-Syria border.
Yes.
They are going after Iran, and they started out by saying in the Iraq and Afghanistan war that they're going over there to stop the Al-Qaeda cells and restore democracy, to give the people, these countries, democracy. They tried to use the same excuse when talking about Egypt and Libya. Oh, right. They need democracy and there's human rights violations. But what they put in is the complete not the opposite of democracy. It is the Sharia. It is extremist views, and this is the laws that will be governing these countries that have been overthrown. And it is for a reason.
Right.
It is to gain to make hostilities. They indoctrinate their children to be violent. And people say that the Christians, I saw an article the other day where they say that parents should not be allowed to indoctrinate their children with the Bible. They say it's indoctrinate, yes.
Right, okay.
But it's just so upside down and backwards. And this freedom of speech issue that we started the show with in Detroit, in Dearborn, what they are doing is talking about a blasphemy law. And you talked about the dangers of this. We talked about this off air, what that would do to Christianity. They're going to they want to pass a blasphemy law. This is what the Muslims in Dearborn want.
It's under the pretext of keeping, they're gonna package this as we're going to prevent people from defaming all religions, and this will keep peace. Well, no, it's not going to keep peace, and no, it's not going to be for all religions. They're going to have the protected religion to be subjected to this law, while Christianity is going to be open season on Christians.
Yeah, look at what's happening.
They despise. Look, though, these powers despise Christians.
Yeah, they cite some of the legal cases of freedom of speech here in the past. One, Christian missionaries trying to convert Muslims at the annual Arab International Festival in June sued the city over their right to preach to Muslims because they were arrested and taken out of there and not allowed to preach.
Right.
Last month, the Christian group Bible Believers sued the Wayne County Sheriff's Office in federal court for allegedly failing to protect its members after young Muslims threw water bottles at them because they were angry about a pig's head and anti-Islam signs the Christians brought to the festival. Terry Jones himself in April sued the city, saying officials wrongfully barred him from protesting outside the Islamic Center of American Mosque.
Again,
I mean, whether you like or agree with Terry Jones and his message,
you can see the plans being formulated here. You can see the stage being set for this, and I have to look at Terry Jones and wonder what's behind him. I mean, is there something more to this? Is there something more to Terry Jones, perhaps?
Listen to this: the release of the anti-Islam film Innocence of Muslim last month added to the debate about free speech. At 4 local protests, some called for restrictions on free speech that offends a religion.
Isn't that convenient, by the way?
Yeah. Fifth rally is planned for later this month.
Yeah. Look, we're getting toward the end of the show. Folks, I just want to tell you this. Real quick here take 2 minutes of your time.
Dog, thanks for sending this to us.
Yes, thank you very much. There was an infographic from mining.com about silver, and people ask us, we get emails about silver and gold and stuff. When I read this, when I saw this graphic, I couldn't believe it. Or when I read this, the comments in this graphic, I couldn't believe this. For the first time in history, folks, silver mines are coming up empty. We're running out of silver. Silver is used in over 10,000 industrial applications, from microchips to microwaves. But think about this. Silver has shot up 690% since January of 2000. 690% in 12 years. Wow, it blows my mind. Gold, on the other hand, 421%. Silver prices have doubled since 2007 in the last 5 years. Versus the Dow. Dow's gone up 1% in the last since 2008. Silver's gone up 116%. Since 2002, silver's gone up 660% over the dollar. And what really got me, think about this, folks. 95% of the silver ever produced has already been consumed. So that means there's only 5%. There's only 5% left. And only enough silver on Earth for every person to have. There's only enough silver on every.
I found this amazing.
Yeah, there's only enough silver on Earth for every person to have 1/3 of an ounce. So, folks, do you think silver is going to go up in price or in value?
Yeah, people in the chat, Matter in saying the gold and silver ratios are higher.
90 seconds.
You were mentioning that.
Yeah, we talked about that just before showtime, that gold and silver always maintained a certain distance. I think it was, 10 times maybe gold was more valuable than silver. But now it's an insane ratio. 16-1. Thank you, Doug. But with that, we are ending the show. We thank you for joining us tonight. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully with our video up, which you can see at Homeland Security US, _1.tk.
60 seconds.
We will have a new look as we are having a new studio finished. So look forward to that.
We've been working on this for the last, 8 months. Folks, I just hope that you feel that you've spent your 3 hours with us has been meaningful, and you've got something out of it. And we just want to say God bless you. And
have a good night.
Have a good night.